Chapter 1018. 3 streaks of sword light streaked across the sky and finally landed on a mountain one after another. Brother Gung. One of the 2 lackeys called out weakly with a hint of respect in his eyes. That damned Chumu. After Gung Dilei returned to the mountain's sword tower, the anger in his heart instantly erupted like an erupting volcano. His sword was unsheathed and his anger was vented. Sword after sword was unsheathed, and he waved his sword without any pattern. Waves of terrifying sword energy mixed with the power of thunder rumbled out. The thunder swept through the cave and wantonly destroyed the surrounding ground. The mountain rocks were shattered, and the grass and trees were turned to dust by the lightning. The 2 lackeys looked at Gendra, who was venting his anger, and quickly hid far away, afraid that they would be affected. After venting for a while, Gendra sheathed his sword. The landscape around him was completely destroyed, and it looked like a ruin. Black smoke rose from the ground. The Ichino sword of Gojosian strength could not have defeated the Samsung sword of Gojosian. Gung Dilei calmed down and carefully analyzed every process of the battle. He used a secret technique and burst forth in an instant. But I underestimated him, resulting in me not being able to display my true strength. I lost the initiative the moment I attacked, so in the end I was defeated. The battle replayed in Gendra's mind over and over again. It was very clear, and Gendra did not let go of any detail. This was his habit. First, he used a divine or secret technique to attack, causing his mind to be slightly distracted. Then he exploded with a speed that even a 3-star sword king like himself was shocked and unable to capture. The might of the imperial sword technique was beyond his imagination. He could use a sword with both hands and perform sword skills. That's right, he even mastered an elemental sword will. King-level elemental sword will. Suddenly thinking of this, Gendra's eyes shone with a sharp light. He was extremely shocked. After analyzing everything, Gendra finally understood the reason for his defeat. I will avenge today's humiliation in the future, Gendra muttered to himself. Next time, he felt that he would not lose. For Chu Mu, the battle with Gendra was just a small interlude in his cultivation. However, if Gendra had not underestimated him, he would not have been able to seize the opportunity. If he did not have the sword pupil, the divine desolate sword art, Deshang's burning blood transformation, and a body that was many times stronger than Gendra's, as well as possessing the terrifying earthquake energy and indestructible sword intent, as well as cultivating Deshang's imperial sword technique. Even if he could seize the opportunity, he would not have been able to defeat Gendra. Therefore, winning wasn't just a fluke. Strength in all aspects, the timing of the battle, outstanding combat awareness, and so on. The joy of winning 10 million high-grade origin crystals quickly passed. Chu Mu returned to the lakeside sword tower and went into seclusion again. There were still more than 8 months before the 1-year agreement with land warfare. Chu Mu still had a grain of high-grade sand of time that he could use. In total, he had close to a year of cultivation. I wonder if I can master the Flying Heaven Imperial Sword technique in this period of time. With a trace of longing, Chu Mu removed all distracting thoughts and immersed himself in the Flying Heaven Imperial Sword technique. Previously, he had already analyzed the 2 major obstacles in the cultivation of the Flying Heaven Imperial Sword technique. Now he had overcome the first obstacle. The Imperial Sword technique had already been cultivated to Deshang's level, and he could control it as he wished. The Flying Heaven Imperial Sword technique was based on the Imperial Sword technique, and it was even more profound. The reason why it was more profound than the Imperial Sword technique was because it contained the essence of Flying Heaven. Only by mastering the essence of Flying Heaven would one be able to master the Flying Heaven Imperial Sword technique. The essence of Flying Heaven could only be understood and not explained with words. Chu Mu had already comprehended it. Now he could only cultivate it again and again until he mastered it. Time flew by. The story of Chu Mu defeating the Samsung sword of Gojoseon Gendra with the Ichino sword of Gojoseon had spread throughout the Heaven-Breaking Institute. His reputation soared, and he was remembered by many sword of Gojoseon. Month after month passed. In the sword tower, a sword light constantly danced. Its speed was more than twice as fast as Deshang's imperial sword technique. In the sky above the West Tiger Great region, clouds floated for thousands of miles, like a huge curtain that covered the sky and covered the earth. In an instant, a sword light shot out from the clouds. Its speed was unbelievably fast. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the distance. It was astonishing. Even an intermediate sword of Gojoseon's speed could not compare to it. However, the owner of that sword light was only the Ichino sword of Gojoseon. With the strength of the Ichino sword of Gojoseon, it possessed the speed of an intermediate sword of Gojoseon. If it was seen by others, they would definitely be shocked. The incomparably fast sword light shot out for thousands of miles. After a short while, its speed suddenly decreased, and its figure was revealed. It was a figure wearing a moon-white robe. His robe fluttered in the wind, and he looked like a celestial being. The speed of the flying heaven sword controlling technique is indeed very fast. It's more than twice as fast as the imperial sword technique. Chu Mu said to himself, however, the flying heaven sword controlling technique consumes twice as much sword origin and divine thought as compared to the imperial sword technique. Faster speed meant greater consumption. This was normal, and Chu Mu was not dissatisfied. The only thing that made him depressed was that he never had enough sword origin. In the flying heaven pavilion, Chu Mu had spent more than a year cultivating the imperial sword technique and the flying heaven sword controlling technique. His Sky Wasteland sword origin did not improve at all. This was something that could not be helped. Time was limited. If he had to take care of both, he would not be able to cultivate the flying heaven sword controlling technique. Moreover, his cultivation would not be able to break through to the second sky of creation realm. The difference between the first sky of creation realm and the second sky of creation realm was 10 times. It was very difficult to improve by 10 times. If one did not have any fortuitous encounters, it would often take a long time to settle down. Under normal circumstances, it would take at least 5 to 10 years for a swordsman with a third-grade cultivation talent to go from the first heaven of creation to the second heaven of creation. And it would take even longer to go from the second heaven of creation to the third heaven of creation. It would take more than 10 years, or even 20 years. Take Gendra, for example. His talent was not bad, but it took him 20 to 30 years to improve from the Ichino sword of Gojoseon to the Samsung sword of Gojoseon. Chu Mu's talent was at the lower 4th grade, which meant that whether it was the speed at which he absorbed the pneuma or transformed it into sword origin, it was relatively slow. It would be more difficult for him to break through the shackles. There was no other way. This was determined by his talent. Therefore, under normal circumstances, he estimated that it would take him at least 5 years to break through from the peak of the first sky of creation realm to the second sky of creation realm and persevere in practicing the infinite desolation sword method. This time, Chu Mu planned to go to the so-called secret realm. He was also hoping to find a treasure that could accelerate his cultivation so that he could break through to the second sky of creation realm as soon as possible. At that time, the quantity and quality of his sword origin would increase by several times. At least it would not be like now, where a lot of his sword origin would be consumed after performing the flying sword control technique. However, the power of his divine thought was very strong. At the first sky of creation realm, it was comparable to some middle grade sword of Gojoseon. His recovery speed was also very fast. After taking out a large number of upper-grade primordial crystals and crushing them to absorb them to recover his sword origin, Chu Mu flew to the Heavenly Sword Hall at a normal speed. Like Chu Mu, there were also many sort of Gojoseon who came from all over the world to the Heavenly Sword Hall. They seemed to have the same purpose. "Brother Chu, you're finally here," Land Warfare said with a smile as he strode over. "When are we leaving?" Chu Mu also smiled and asked, "You're the only one left. Let's go. I'll bring you to the gathering point and then we'll leave together," Land Warfare said. "What's the name of the secret realm we're going to? Besides you and me, who else is there?" Chu Mu could not help but ask. He did not expect it to be just him and Land Warfare. After all, after a secret realm opened, there would definitely be many swordsmen who would enter and compete for the treasures. Therefore, many swordsmen would form teams. The secret realm we're going to is called the Real Elemental Secret Realm. It's a secret realm that has existed since ancient times. It opens once every 100 years. Every time it opens, a large number of Sword of Gojosian will enter. Land Warfare said, "Besides you and me, there are 5 more people. When we arrive, I'll introduce them to you one by one." Not long after, under the leadership of Land Warfare, Chu Mu met up with the others. There were 2 men and 2 women, including Chu Mu and Land Warfare. There were 4 men and 2 women. Of the 2 men, one was a middle-aged swordsman who looked honest. He carried a heavy sword on his back. His palms were wide and his figure was tall and sturdy. He looked very powerful. When he saw Chu Mu and Land Warfare, he smiled and greeted them. The other man looked younger. He had fair skin and narrow eyes that flickered with a cold light. At first glance, he gave off a feeling that he was not to be trifled with. When he saw Land Warfare, he only nodded. When he saw Chu Mu, he frowned and looked somewhat dissatisfied. As for the 2 women, one of the Sword of Gojosian had skin as white as ivory. Her appearance was relatively ordinary, but as the saying goes, a white face can cover up 100 ugliness. Even though her appearance was ordinary, she was still quite good-looking. The other woman's skin was darker, but it was not rough at all. Instead, it was smooth. She was much more beautiful than the other woman. She could be considered a dark beauty. Through their auras, Chu Mu knew that these 4 people were all Samsung, Sword of Gojosian. "Let me introduce everyone. This is Chu Mu." Land Warfare opened his mouth to introduce everyone. "Land Warfare, what's wrong with you? Do you think we're going to have fun?" The narrow-eyed Sword of Gojosian frowned and interrupted Land Warfare with a dissatisfied tone. He glanced at Chu Mu. "Brotherly, although Brother Chu's cultivation is only at the first firmament of Blessed Realm. His strength is not something an ordinary Ichino Sword of Gojosian can compare to," Land Warfare hurriedly explained. "An Ichino Sword of Gojosian is an Ichino Sword of Gojosian. No matter how powerful he is still an Ichino Sword of Gojosian. How can he compare to a Samsung Sword of Gojosian?" The narrow-eyed Sword of Gojosian interrupted Land Warfare again. There was a hint of sarcasm in his tone. He looked at Chu Mu and smiled coldly. The honest-looking middle-aged Sword of Gojosian did not say anything. The 2 women also frowned slightly. They seemed to be dissatisfied with Land Warfare's method of letting an Ichino Sword of Gojosian join the team. Chapter 1019. Everyone, although Brother Chu's cultivation is only at the first heavenly layer of fate, I can guarantee that once his strength explodes, it will not be inferior to an ordinary Samsung Sword of Gojosian. Land Warfare raised his hand and made a solemn vow. "I believe all of you have heard of the battle of titles between Brother Chu and the 7-star Sword of Gojosian, Jiu, a year ago, right? I've heard of it, but at that time Jiu's cultivation was suppressed to the first heavenly layer of fate. He did not have the strength of the 7-star Sword of Gojosian." The narrow-eyed man, surnamed Listil, retorted. "Moreover, seeing is believing. Furthermore, Jiu's cultivation was suppressed to the first heavenly layer of fate. He could not use many of his techniques, and his strength was weakened by who knows how many times. It's impossible to count. This Li swordsman was targeting him and not letting him off easily. Even if Chu Mu was made of wood, he would still be enraged. His indifferent gaze fell on Li's face, and he said unhurriedly, "Then how can I prove that I'm qualified? Defeat you?" As soon as Chumu spoke, apart from land warfare, the other four were stunned. "What did you say? You want to defeat me?" Li's swordsman's narrow eyes widened, and a cold glint flashed in them, as if he had heard something inconceivable. His anger surged, and his tone became cold. "Fine, I'll give you a chance. Let's see how you can defeat me." Wisps of sharp aura suddenly gushed out from Li's swordsman's body. Sword chi twined like silk, as if countless snakes were slithering around. Chumu felt as if he had been locked onto. "All right, since we're on the same team, there's no need to quarrel over such things. A year ago, I also witnessed the battle of titles between Chumu and Jiyu. Chumu's strength is indeed superior to that of an ordinary 2-star sword of Gojoseon." Suddenly, at this moment of confrontation, a voice that was fierce like a sword pierced through, and it instantly destroyed this confrontational atmosphere. Everyone turned around and saw a middle-aged man in a golden-red robe striding over. "Brother Lil, you came." Land Warfare breathed a sigh of relief and quickly greeted the man who came over. Chumu keenly noticed that the sword of Gojoseon, who was dressed in a golden-red robe and looked like the rising sun, had a cultivation base that surpassed the third heaven of Creation Realm. They were either at the fourth or fifth heavenly layer of Creation Realm. A question popped up in his mind. Wasn't it said that only the low-grade sword of Gojoseon could enter the Zhenyuan realm? Did an intermediate sword of Gojoseon plan to participate? Chumu knew very well that the various mystic realms had very strict restrictions on entry. If one's strength was too strong, they would definitely not be able to enter. If one tried to force their way in, they would only be courting death. However, this had nothing to do with anything. "All right, since everyone is here, let me make an introduction." Land Warfare quickly stood between Chumu and the man with long and narrow eyes, blocking their line of sight to avoid any more trouble. "This is Lu Zhongliao, Brother Lu. He has a cultivation base of the fifth heavenly layer of Creation Realm and is also a bronze sergeant of Heavenly Sword Hall." Land Warfare gestured to the golden-red robed sword of Gojoseon, who was like the rising sun. Then he gestured to the burly man with an honest expression. "This is Lu Shan. He has a cultivation base of the third heavenly layer of Creation Realm and is a black iron sergeant." He introduced them one by one. The man with long and narrow eyes was called Li Quan. He had a cultivation base of the third heavenly layer of Creation Realm and was a black iron sergeant. The female sword of Gojoseon with skin as white as ivory was called Lon Exen. She had a cultivation base of the third heavenly layer of Creation Realm and was a black iron sergeant. The female sword of Gojoseon with smooth and dark skin was called Liang Shu. She had a cultivation base of the third heavenly layer of Creation Realm and was a black iron sergeant. Land Warfare also had a cultivation base of the third heavenly layer of Creation Realm and was a black iron sergeant. Chumu had a cultivation base of the first heavenly layer of Creation Realm and was a black iron sergeant. "Our temporary team will be led by Brother Le," Land Warfare said in the end. "Everyone, our team has a total of 7 people, including me. Among the many teams heading to the True Energy Secret Realm, we are a very ordinary team. If we want to gain something in the True Energy Secret Realm, we must first do something." When Lu Zhongliao became serious, he gave off a kind of pressure that made people pay attention to him. "Unity. We must be united. We cannot have internal strife. Otherwise, we can forget about gaining anything in the True Energy Secret Realm. I can see that you are dissatisfied with Chumu's cultivation base of the first heavenly layer of Creation Realm. But a year ago, I saw Chumu fight with Jiyu after he suppressed his cultivation base with my own eyes. He proved that his strength is even stronger than an ordinary 2-star sword of Gojoseon. Therefore, I believe that he will not be a burden to us." Lu Zhongliao continued, "We are a temporary team, and I am the temporary team leader. My request is very simple. We must be united and avoid internal strife. If anyone starts an internal strife, don't blame me for being rude." His last sentence was a little harsh, showing his determination. If anyone started an internal strife, he would not be polite. The pressure of the 5-star sword of Gojoseon spread out from Lu Zhongliao's body, causing Li Quan's expression to change. He wanted to say something several times, but he swallowed his words. "I have a suggestion," Blue Heart suddenly said. She glanced at Chumu and then at Lu Zhongliao. "I didn't see it with my own eyes, so I don't know how strong Chumu is. Even if he is stronger than an ordinary 2-star sword of Gojoseon, it does not mean that he can rival a Samsung sword of Gojoseon. If he is not as strong as a Samsung sword of Gojoseon, he might delay our team's progress. Therefore, I think that if we enter the true energy secret realm and encounter danger, I will not help him." "Me too." Liang Shu also expressed her opinion. Li Quan's lips curled into a smile. Needless to say, his thoughts were definitely the same, and perhaps even more extreme. "All right, I understand what you mean. After we enter the true energy secret realm, if Chumu encounters any danger that he can't handle, I will take care of him." Lu Zhongliao seemed to have the intention of befriending Chumu. He deliberately looked at Chumu and said, "But most of it will depend on your own ability." Chumu nodded. He was very surprised. Why would Lu Zhongliao take care of him so much? "All right, let's go. The true energy secret realm is about to open." As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Zhongliao led everyone to a corner of the Heavenly Sword Hall to board the Heavenly Sword Hall's battleship. The true energy secret realm was located outside the Western Tiger Territory, in another territory. That territory was not as big as the Western Tiger Territory, and the number of experts was also not as many as the Western Tiger Territory. There were many sword of Gojoseon who wanted to go to the true energy secret realm, and they had already formed a team in advance. The Heavenly Sword Hall had a special battleship to send them, and the price was that each person had to pay 100,000 high-grade yuanjing as the fee. Lu Zhongliao directly took out 700,000 high-grade yuanjing to pay. It seemed that to him, 700,000 high-grade yuanjing was just a drizzle. After boarding the battleship, the 7 of them gathered together. The other teams of sword of Gojoseon had their own places, and there were also some who were alone. Chumu discovered that most of the sword of Gojoseon were Samsung sword of Gojoseon, and there were also a few 2-star sword of Gojoseon and a Chino sword of Gojoseon. There were also some mid-grade sword of Gojoseon, and there were even some high-grade sword of Gojoseon, which puzzled him. "Brother Lu, didn't you say that only low-grade sword of Gojoseon can enter the true energy secret realm?" Chumu asked. "Don't you know that there's a kind of elixir called the Yuanjing pill?" Li Quan seemed to have grasped an opportunity. The corners of his mouth curled up into a mocking smile, and he looked at Chumu with a somewhat disdainful gaze. Chumu directly ignored Li Quan's attitude, and the records of a Yuanjing pill flashed through his mind. The Yuanjing pill only had one use, and that was to suppress one's cultivation. In other words, these mid-grade and even high-grade sword of Gojoseon who were heading to the true energy secret realm were planning to take the Yuanjing pill to reduce their cultivation to the 3rd heavenly layer of the fortune realm, thereby gaining the qualifications to enter the true energy secret realm. After these mid-grade and high-grade sword of Gojoseon's cultivation were suppressed, some of their powerful sword of Gojoseon's sword skills could not be used, and their overall strength would be greatly reduced. However, their divine sense power was not affected much, and their mastery and application of the power of laws were not affected either. Therefore, their strength was still much stronger than that of the Samsung sword of Gojoseon. It could be said that among the sword of Gojoseon who were heading to the true energy secret realm, Chumu was considered to be at the lowest level. However, once his strength erupted, it would not be difficult for him to kill an ordinary Samsung sword of Gojoseon. This was because the true level of his sword intent and power of laws was not heaven rank, but divine rank. Once his divine rank sword intent and power of laws erupted, the power of his sword skills would increase tenfold. In addition to his other strengths, Chu Mu's attack power was enough to make a Samsung sword of Gojosian tremble. He could also threaten a 4-star sword of Gojosian. Lu Zhongliao's understanding of the true energy secret realm was far better than Chu Mu and the others. Sitting on the battleship, he explained all kinds of things about the true energy secret realm to everyone so that they had a rough idea of what was going on. Chu Mu caught a cold gaze filled with sharp killing intent that pierced through time and space and landed on his face. He quickly turned around and saw a sneering face. It was none other than the Shattered Star House's disciple, Yu Byakuya. Yu Byakuya was with the other sword of Gojosian. When he saw Chu Mu looking at him, he stretched out his hand and made a throat-slitting gesture. Chu Mu sneered and retracted his gaze, ignoring Yu Byakuya. Everything would be left for when they reached the true energy secret realm. The battleship's speed was extremely fast, but it would still take nearly a month to reach the true energy secret realm. During this time, other than gathering every few days, Huang Xiaolong spent most of his time cultivating in his room. Every day, Chu Mu would cultivate the infinite desolate sword origin once, because he knew that a breakthrough in sword origin wasn't something that could be done in a day. Even if he spent a whole month cultivating, he still wouldn't be able to make a breakthrough. The focus of cultivation was on the control and application of the power of laws, as well as the cultivation of the Flying Heaven Imperial Sword Art. The Flying Heaven Imperial Sword Art could be divided into 2 stages, minor completion and Deshang. At present, Chu Mu had only cultivated the Flying Heaven Imperial Sword Art to minor completion, which required the coordination of sword fingers to display the Flying Heaven Imperial Sword Art. If he cultivated it to Deshang, he could display the Flying Heaven Imperial Sword Art as he wished, and his battle prowess would immediately soar. He also believed that after entering the true energy secret realm, perhaps the Flying Heaven Imperial Sword Art would erupt with great power. Chapter 1020. At first glance, it was like a boundless Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake. The lake water was transparent and viscous like slurry. It was calm without any ripples, like a pure and flawless mirror. It reflected the blue sky and the white clouds, making it difficult to distinguish between the real and the fake. A series of roars tore through the sky. Several warships of different colors flew over from different directions and stopped at the edge of the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake. Then, one figure after another flew out from the warships and fell like meteorites. Flashes of light flashed, dragging trails of flame behind them. It was like a meteor shower. All of them were sort of Gojosian. Some were in groups and some were alone. There were thousands of them. The opening of a secret realm had attracted so many sword of Gojosian. It had to be said that the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake was very attractive. A tyrannical aura emanated from every sword king's body. The sharp and astonishing radiance was like an invisible sword that cut through the void. Vaguely, one could see the invisible marks that were cut by the sharp aura, appearing and disappearing. The arrival of tens of thousands of sword of Gojosian broke the tranquility of the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake. It was like a stone had fallen into the lake. Layers of circular ripples slowly spread out. The viscous lake water had great resistance. The ripples did not spread far before they gradually disappeared, and the lake returned to its calm state. Each sword of Gojosian was floating in the air, as if there was an invisible land under their feet. Chu Mu stared at the surface of the true origin mirror lake below. The seemingly clear and transparent lake water couldn't see the bottom. He could only see the reflection of the blue sky and white clouds. Yet he felt that under the calm lake water, something was hidden. Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake. Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake. Maybe the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake was under the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake. Some people say that the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake is under the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake. However, some people have entered the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake to explore but they have found nothing. Lu Zhongliao suddenly said, "But one thing is for sure, the Zhan Yuan realm will definitely appear in the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake. The Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake is the only entrance to the Zhan Yuan realm. This time, there are many sort of Gojosian who want to enter the true essence realm. There are even advanced sort of Gojosian. Even if they take the vitality suppressing pill and suppress their cultivation to the third heavenly layer of the blessed realm, the advanced sort of Gojosian strength is still very terrifying. It's best not to provoke them if possible." Lu Zhongliao's tone was grave. He was only a 5-star sort of Gojosian. Compared to a 7-star sort of Gojosian, there was a huge difference. He might not even be able to withstand a single strike from the other party. Although their cultivation bases had been suppressed to the third heavenly layer of creation realm after taking the vitality suppressing pill, the high-grade sword of Gojosian's comprehension and mastery of the rules and sword skills were definitely above his. Their battle prowess would definitely surpass his as well. Moreover, if he made enemies in the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake, the other party would definitely not let him off after he came out alive. Therefore, it was best not to offend the high-grade sword of Gojosian. In fact, he could not even offend the mid-grade sword of Gojosian unless he was confident that he could kill the other party in the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake. Otherwise, even if he had to give up some benefits, it would be better than being hunted down by the other party after he came out. Everyone's expressions were solemn. The light in Chumu's eyes was restrained and clear. Like an ancient well without ripples, it was like the water in a mirror lake. He slowly swept his gaze around and swept it across every sword king. There were not many high-grade sword of Gojosian. There were about a dozen of them. Chumu already knew that these high-grade sword of Gojosian did not enter the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake to obtain anything, but to bring people with them. In every high-grade sword of Gojosian's group, there were definitely a few 1-star or 2-star sword of Gojosian, as well as a few mid-grade sword of Gojosian and Samsung sword of Gojosian accompanying them. The Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake was a secret realm that was suitable for low-grade sword of Gojosian to explore. For high-grade sword of Gojosian, it was not attractive. Even some mid-grade sword of Gojosian who were doing well were too lazy to enter, as they had better places to go. Simply put, the mid-grade sword of Gojosian who were trying their best to enter the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake were all ordinary mid-grade sword of Gojosian. Of course, there were also some powerful mid-grade sword of Gojosian who entered with their own goals. The Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake had been opened many times since the first time. The first few times it was opened, the high-grade sword of Gojosian must have entered to sweep through and obtain enough benefits. Now the rest was like soup. However, for low-grade sword of Gojosian, it was still a good place to train. If there were no surprises, Chumu obviously did not want to become enemies with the high-grade sword of Gojosian or the mid-grade sword of Gojosian. Whether it was the mid-grade sword of Gojosian or the high-grade sword of Gojosian, even if their cultivation was suppressed to the third heavenly layer of creation, they were still 100 times stronger than him. Combined with everything else, Chumu did not have much confidence in fighting against them. At this moment, the seemingly frozen surface of the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake seemed to be stirred up by an invisible hand. Layers of ripples spread out. Not only did the ripples not weaken, but they became more and more intense, gradually forming small waves that pushed forward layer by layer. As if being hit by a gust of wind, the waves grew bigger and bigger and began to howl. Everyone's gazes were attracted. They knew that the door to the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake was about to open. Suddenly, there was a clap of thunder, and the white clouds scattered. Dark clouds filled the sky, and the blue sky seemed to be swallowed by the night. Darkness descended above the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake. Thunder clouds raged, and purple flood dragons appeared in the dark clouds, roaring wantonly. Gusts of wind blew, and the storm attacked, bombarding the surface of the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake. Raging waves surged, and in the roar, it was as if the evil dragon hidden under the Zhan Yuan Mirror Lake had awakened. It roared and soared into the sky, wanting to break through the dome of heaven. The incomparably huge water column, in a counterclockwise manner, shot straight up from the surface of the true essence mirror lake into the sky, shattering the thick layer of dark clouds and attracting the purple lightning. In an instant, it turned into streaks of lightning arcs, filling and leaping within the black water column storm. The lightning bolts stood upright, and the storm attacked. At the edge of the water column, there were sharp, blade-like ripples spiraling upwards. It looked very terrifying, as if it could cut and mince anything. This was the might of the heavens and earth, the might of nature. In front of this, even the sword of Gojosian felt small. Compared to this vast might, they were like ants. Their struggles were futile. Even the dozen or so high-grade sword of Gojosian were aghast. This was not the first time they had seen such a phenomenon. The vast and majestic aura was endless, as if it had existed since ancient times, as if it could destroy the heavens and earth. Traces of palpitations filled his heart and lingered endlessly. As time passed, the sky-piercing, thunderstorm water column stabilized. The terrifying aura it emitted also became more restrained. However, it still made people feel very oppressed, as if a mountain was pressing down on their hearts and suppressing their spiritual world. The gate to the Zhan Yuan secret realm has appeared. Let's go. A voice sounded. Immediately, the high-grade sword of Gojosian and the middle-grade sword of Gojosian took out vitality-suppressing pills and threw them into their mouths. Their powerful auras began to decrease rapidly and finally stabilized at the peak of the third sky of Creation Realm. Then the dozen or so high-grade sword of Gojosian moved one after another. They led their teams and quickly rushed towards the sky-piercing, thunderstorm water column. Suddenly, the dozen or so high-grade sword of Gojosian and their teams rushed into the column and disappeared as if they were swallowed. "Let's go in too," Yu Zhongliao said. He took the lead and flew towards the sky-piercing, thunderstorm water column. The closer he got to the sky-piercing, thunderstorm water column, the greater the pressure Chumu felt. The terrifying power seemed to want to crush him into powder. He also had a strange feeling that, as long as his cultivation exceeded the third sky of Creation Realm, he would definitely be attacked by the power of the sky-piercing, thunderstorm water column and be annihilated. Even a sword saint would find it difficult to resist such power, let alone a sword of Gojosian. Withstanding the terrifying pressure, Chumu rushed into the water column. He felt as if his body was being torn apart. He was pulled by a force that he could not resist. After a long time, he finally felt his feet on the ground. Yu Zhongliao and the others were beside him. They all looked around and sized up the environment of the Zhan Yuan secret realm. It was a vast and empty field. The yellowish-brown soil revealed an endless desolation. There was not the slightest bit of green vegetation. There was only yellow sand and yellowish-brown boulders all over the place. But everyone found that the yuan qi of heaven and earth here was abnormally dense. It was 10 times denser than the yuan qi of heaven and earth in the 5 major forces. It was also very pure. If I cultivate in a place like this, my cultivation will definitely improve faster. Land Warfare took a deep breath and seemed to be talking to himself. The others nodded in agreement. The appearance of tens of thousands of sword of Gojosian here caused the calm yuan qi of heaven and earth to become turbulent. Then, strands of sharpness gushed out from the void. The yuan qi of heaven and earth in many places gathered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Gradually, the yuan qi of heaven and earth formed a human figure. "It's the spirit of the sword qi. Let's go," someone exclaimed. It was one of the high-grade sword of Gojosian. When he saw the human figure in the void, his expression changed slightly. He quickly led the team away. The other high-grade sword of Gojosian also changed their expressions. They quickly led the team away. It seemed that they did not want to become enemies with the so-called sword qi spirit. I heard that the sword qi spirit is a unique life form in the Zhan Yuan secret realm. It is impossible to kill it all. Moreover, it is very powerful. It is not a good idea to become enemies with it. Someone said and quickly left. Let's go as well. Lu Zhongliao's expression changed as he hurriedly said, before coming to the Zhanyuan secret realm, he had done a lot of research on it. He had long heard of the spirit of Sword Chi's ferocious reputation, and today he had seen it with his own eyes. Before the Sword Chi spirit was fully formed, it was best to leave immediately. Although he was curious about the Sword Chi spirit, Chu Mu was not an arrogant person. Even the high-grade sword of Gojoseon did not want to face the Sword Chi spirit, so there was no need for him to take the risk. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of sword of Gojoseon moved forward, heading towards the deeper part of the Zhan Yuan secret realm. In the outer part, it was basically impossible to get any benefits. After all, the Zhan Yuan secret realm had been opened so many times that all the treasures in the outer part had been taken away. They could only go deeper and try their luck. Maybe they would not get anything, maybe they would get something good, or maybe they would die. Chapter 10:21. The Zhan Yuan secret territory was very big. Tens of thousands of sword of Gojoseon had entered it, and after dispersing, it was like a stone sinking into the ocean. Along the way, the group did not encounter any danger. However, the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth in the wilderness seemed to have been stirred up and became extremely violent. Countless sharp auras gathered and formed human figures. These human figures were very strange. They did not have faces and were formless. Their bodies were sleek and smooth, as if they were wearing one-piece tights. They were yellowish-brown in color and were surrounded by threads of Sword Chi. These were the Sword Chi spirits. Countless Sword Chi spirits seemed to have been awakened from their sleep and appeared in the wilderness of the Zhan Yuan secret territory. In the Zhan Yuan secret territory, there was an endless wilderness, and there were also ruins of buildings. The terrain was very different. A strange-looking tree was growing alone on a huge rock. The tree was not tall, only about 3 meters tall. There were countless branches, but there were no leaves. It looked like a coral, and its texture was like iron. It was very hard. On the dense branches, there were fruits the size of a longan. The skin of the fruit was yellowish-brown. With everyone's eyesight, they could clearly see the rough surface of the fruit, but it did not make the fruit ugly. Instead, it had a unique texture. Traces of pure energy were being emitted from those fruits, dissipating in the air and making the heaven and earth Yuan Qi much richer. That is a king-level Zhan Yuan tree, and the fruit is called king-level Zhan Yuan fruit. Lu Zhongliao said in a low voice, the Zhan Yuan fruit contains pure heaven and earth Yuan Qi. It can be directly consumed and refined into Sword Qi. It is very effective to increase one's cultivation. So this is the Zhan Yuan fruit. Li Quan and the others' eyes suddenly lit up. The Zhan Yuan fruit was a special product of the Zhan Yuan secret territory. It was very rare. Of course, the reason why it was called the Zhan Yuan fruit was because it grew in the Zhan Yuan secret territory. Naturally, there were fruits with similar effects in the outside world, but they were very rare. The low-grade Jin Yuan fruit is very effective for the low-grade sword of Gojoseon, but it has no effect on the mid-grade sword of Gojoseon. Zhongliao said, look at the Zhan Yuan fruit on that Zhan Yuan tree. There are 130 of them. How about this? I will only take 10 of them, and the remaining 120 of them will be divided equally among you. Brother Lu, this is not appropriate. Li Quan was the first to speak. He glanced at Chu Mu and continued, if Brother Lu gets a bigger share, or if we split it equally, I don't have any objections. But the Ichino sword of Gojoseon still needs our protection. I don't think he is qualified to get the Jinyuan fruit. Brother Li, you can't say that. Land Warfare immediately retorted. The others didn't express any opinions, but their thoughts were very simple. It would be best if they could get more. Chu Mu didn't say anything. He took in everyone's expressions. The true essence fruit is of no use to me. I only want 10 of them to give away. Lu Zhongliao didn't have any intention of asking for more. As for the remaining 120 pills, you can split them equally because we are a team. Why don't we do this? Li Quan was very concerned about the loss of a few true essence fruits. He rolled his eyes and said, "There's a group of sword chi spirits under the true essence tree. Let me count. There is a total of 6 of them. Brother Lu, you don't have to do it. The 6 of us will take 1 each. Only by killing the sword chi spirits will we be qualified to get the true essence fruit." Without a doubt, this was another method that Li Quan came up with to make things difficult. His goal was to not give the true essence fruit to Chu Mu, but to get a few more. The aura of those sword chi spirits isn't simple. Even if we want to kill them, it won't be that easy. Land Warfare's face darkened. He was the one who invited Chu Mu, but he was being made difficult again and again. Naturally, he was very angry. "Brother Lu, didn't you say that Chu Mu isn't an ordinary Achino sort of Gojosian? His strength is stronger than an ordinary 2-star sort of Gojosian? Now, it's time to test his strength. It's also time to test whether he is qualified to travel with us," Li Quan retorted. "I agree with Li Quan's idea," Lan Xan said. "I agree too," Liang Shu also said. Lu Shan didn't say a word. "Then let's do it this way." Chu Mu smiled and said, "Only with strength could one be recognized by others." This was a very common thing. Since Chu Mu agreed, Land Warfare couldn't say anything. Lu Zhongliao also didn't say anything. After all, they were a team. It wouldn't be good to help anyone. The 6 sword chi spirits wandered around the true essence tree's rocks. They were like the guardians of the true essence tree. If one wanted to pick the true essence fruit, they would have to go through the sword chi spirits. The aura of each sword chi spirit wasn't weak. They were at least at the 2nd sky of Fortune Realm. Some were even at the peak of the 2nd sky of Fortune Realm. "I'll watch from the side. You guys take 1 each and finish the battle as soon as possible," Le Zhongliao said. "No problem." Li Quan seemed to want to show off. He took the lead and rushed out. He unsheathed his sword, and a cold sword light cut through the air. His sword was like a poisonous snake coming out of its hole. It was precise and tricky, stabbing towards one of the sword chi spirits. The others also attacked. Chu Mu naturally didn't fall behind. His body merged with the rules of wind. He flew out like a gust of wind. His body was as agile as if it was weightless. His sword was still in its sheath, waiting to be unsheathed. When everyone moved, the sword chi spirits noticed them. There seemed to be angry screeches. Then, the 6 sword chi spirits raised their arms. In an instant, 6 extremely pure and sharp sword chi shot out. The sword chi broke through the air. It was sharp and piercing. Not only was it fast, but it was also biting cold. It made those who were targeted feel like they were going to be pierced through. The sword chi spirits were formed from the yuan chi of the world and sword chi. Every move was like a sword attack. Its lethality was shocking. Chu Mu and the rest of the 6 used their movement techniques to avoid the sword chi attack. They used their sword techniques and counterattacked. The sword chi spirits immediately showed extraordinary fighting techniques. They didn't seem to have much intelligence or consciousness. They only had the instinct to fight, and this instinct seemed to have been tempered thousands of times. It was very exquisite. Every sword chi spirit condensed a sword chi from pure sword chi. The sword chi was astonishingly tough. When it was swung, its sharpness was unstoppable. Terrifying ripples of sword chi radiated from every sword chi spirit, filling the surrounding air and creating layers of ripples. They swung their swords and unleashed a never-before-seen, but extremely exquisite, sword technique of close combat. Moreover, the swordsmanship of each spirit of sword chi was different. In a fight of sword techniques, Chu Mu didn't fear even sword saints. However, the sword techniques of the sword chi spirits made Chu Mu's eyes light up. He was excited and didn't attack ruthlessly. Instead, he circled around the sword chi spirits. Even though Li Quan and the others had the cultivation of the third heaven of creation realm and were Samsung's sword of Gojoseon, they couldn't immediately kill the sword chi spirits. The strength of the sword chi spirits was equivalent to the peak of a 2-star sword of Gojoseon. However, because of their special life form, they were very tenacious. Even if they were hit, they wouldn't be injured or killed directly. They would only be weakened a little. They were very difficult to deal with. However, the strength of the sword chi spirits was ultimately inferior to that of land warfare and the others. Not long after, their figures faded and were almost scattered. At this time, Chumu had already figured out the sword techniques of the sword chi spirits and began to counterattack. He didn't use any sword techniques. He only used his sword techniques to kill the sword chi spirits. Chumu's sword techniques were even more exquisite. Every move was concise, direct, and extremely sharp. The sword chi spirits couldn't dodge at all. They were hit by Chumu's sword. With each strike, a wisp of primordial chi would dissipate from the sword chi spirits' bodies, and their figures gradually faded. The sword chi spirits didn't have intelligence. They only had instincts. No matter how exquisite their fighting skills were, in the end, they were still a little inflexible to Chumu. They were slowly ground to death by Chumu. Slash! The last strike was like a bolt of lightning descending from the sky. It was swift and explosive as it struck the sword chi spirits' heads. The thunder law exploded and exploded, turning into countless sword chi, primordial chi, and dissipating into the air. Although these sword chi spirits were only ordinary level 2 sword chi spirits and didn't have the power of law, they were not afraid of death. Moreover, their sword techniques were exquisite. With the strength of the Ichino sword of Gojoseon, killing an ordinary level 2 sword chi spirit with his sword techniques is indeed extraordinary. Lu Zhongliao nodded inwardly. The 6 sword chi spirits were all killed. Li Quan took the lead and leaped onto the rock. With a sweep of his sleeves, he immediately plucked all 130 true yuan fruits. Chumu killed that sword chi spirit and proved his strength. Land warfare quickly said he should get 20 true yuan fruits. This was what Li Quan had said before. Now that Chumu had done it, even if he was unwilling, he couldn't go against it. With a gloomy face, Li Quan waved his sleeves and 20 true yuan fruits shot towards Chumu with a sharp whistling sound. Their speed was extremely fast. Each true yuan fruit actually contained a trace of sword yuan. The Samsung sword of Gojoseon's sword yuan was no small matter to the Ichino sword of Gojoseon. It was obvious that Li Quan wanted to embarrass Chumu. Land warfare's expression changed. Lu Zhongliao also frowned. Chumu's expression didn't change. With a wave of his sleeves, layers of chi swirled up like a whirlpool and directly wrapped around the 20 true yuan fruits. The storm-like chi, along with the power of Chumu's infinite desolation sword yuan, weakened the sword yuan on the true yuan fruits layer by layer. When there was only a trace of sword yuan left, Chumu's palm grabbed the 20 true yuan fruits. With a strong shake, he activated the earthquake energy and directly shattered the remaining sword yuan. Without looking at Li Quan's gloomy face, Chumu put the 19 true yuan fruits into his interspatial ring. He pinched a true yuan fruit between his fingers and scanned it with his divine sense. He carefully felt the energy fluctuations within. The heaven and earth yuan chi was indeed very pure. It was almost like yuan liquid that existed within the fruit. If one used true yuan fruits to cultivate, the effect would definitely be 10 times or dozens of times better than using high-grade yuan crystals. Moreover, true yuan fruits were fruits, not elixirs. They weren't poisonous like elixirs. As long as there were enough of them, one could consume more and increase one's cultivation base even faster. What a pity! If we had the spirit garden pearl, we would be able to transplant that low-grade true yuan tree. We would be able to harvest more true yuan fruits in the future. Lu Zhongliao sighed. The so-called spirit garden pearl was a secret treasure that had its own world. Its only use was to transplant spirit herbs, spirit plants, and so on. Chapter 10:22. Sword Qi whistled through the air with earth-shattering momentum. Gusts of wind swept through the air as if they were going to destroy everything. Too strong, we can't resist. Run. Lu Zhongliao's expression changed. Facing the terrifying Sword Qi, even an intermediate sort of Gojosian like him couldn't help but tremble, not to mention land warfare, Li Quan, and the others. The terrifying aura and incomparably sharp aura filled the air. It was strict and unstoppable. Chu Mu's expression also changed greatly. With his strength, if he were to go against such a sword aura, all his defenses would be destroyed and he would be annihilated within. Without hesitation, he turned around and flew away, leaving with the others. There was nothing he could do. There were too many Sword Qi spirits chasing after him. Not long after they had killed the 6 spirits of Sword Qi and obtained the true origin fruit, a large number of spirits of Sword Qi had appeared. One by one, they rushed over like a wave. Their flying speed was extremely fast, and as they waved their arms, terrifying Sword Qi shot out. Their power was at least comparable to a superior Earth rank first-grade sword skill, and some even reached the power of a superior Earth rank second-grade sword skill. If it was just 1, 2, or 3, it wouldn't be a big deal. The problem was that there were over 1,000 Sword Qi spirits surging over. The terrifying Sword Qi that shot out was also over 1,000. When they collided, they gathered into a terrifying river of Sword Qi that surged and swept, crushing everything in its path. It was unstoppable, even if Lu Zhongliao had recovered all of his cultivation. With the strength of a 5-star Sword of Gojosian, he wouldn't dare to face it head-on. He could only retreat. Among the 1,000 Sword Qi spirits chasing after him, some were level 1, some level 2, and some level 3. The leading Sword Qi spirit's body flickered with a fiery red light, causing the air to heat up. That was a level 3 elite Sword Qi spirit. It had grasped the power of fire rule. It was even more terrifying than an ordinary level 3 Sword Qi spirit. The Sword Qi it released contained the power of fire rule. Its power was even more terrifying. It was actually comparable to an Earth Tier 2 sword skill. The Sword Qi river whistled and surged endlessly, as if it was going to destroy the void. To the side, a group of Sword Qi spirits suddenly appeared and chased after them. They shot out dozens of terrifying Sword Qi, causing everyone's expression to change greatly. There were too many Sword Qi spirits and Sword Qi. As everyone flew away, they had to wave their swords to shatter the Sword Qi. The swords in their hands trembled and their arms numbed. Among the 7 people, Lu Zhongliao and Chu Mu were the most relaxed. Lu Zhongliao was relaxed because he was a 5-star sort of Gojosian. Even if his cultivation was suppressed to the 3rd sky of creation realm, the purity of his sword origin was still higher than that of a Samsung sort of Gojosian. He was still a 5-star sort of Gojosian. Moreover, his physical strength was much stronger than most Samsung sort of Gojosian. His ability to use his strength was also clearly better than that of an ordinary Samsung sort of Gojosian. Chu Mu was relaxed because of his physical strength. After being tempered by the 9-turn body-refining fruit, Chu Mu's physical strength was more than 10 times that of other Ichino sword of Gojosian. Even when compared to Lu Zhongliao, he was several times stronger. Moreover, every time he shattered a Sword Qi, he would receive a backlash. Chu Mu was proficient in the power of vibration. Therefore, he did not need to withstand the backlash. Instead, he used the backlash to increase the power of his sword. When he slashed out, it would be easier for him to shatter the Sword Qi. On the other hand, as time passed, the others began to pale in comparison. Although their sword origin was stronger than Chu Mu's, the difference in their physical strength was too great. Moreover, their understanding of the power of vibration was only at a superficial level. If Chu Mu had reached the level of a grandmaster in the power of vibration, then they would only be at the level of an apprentice. There were too many sword chi. Under the backlash, land warfare and the others felt their arms go numb. Their movements became somewhat sluggish. A sword chi shot out. Land warfare's pupils shrank rapidly. He desperately waved his sword in an attempt to block it. However, because of the numbness in his arm, his movements became sluggish. At this moment, a split second was enough to determine life and death. If he was hit by the sword chi, even if he did not die, he would definitely be injured. Once he was injured, the situation would be even worse. At this critical moment, an astonishingly sharp sword light seemed to have come from the sky. Because it was so fast when it pierced through the air, it created layers of ripples. The incomparably sharp sound almost made land warfare lose his hearing. With a pop, the sword chi that was about to pierce through land warfare's chest was hit by the cold and sharp sword light. A terrifying power exploded and the sword chi was instantly shattered. After shattering the sword aura with one strike, Chu Mu did not stop. He swung his sword again and sent out a sword beam to save Lu Shan, who was in trouble. Whoosh! 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 Chu Mu slashed out again and again, saving Li Quan, Lan Xien, and Liang Shu. It could be said that apart from Lu Zhongliao, the other 5 had all been saved by Chu Mu. To Chu Mu, this was just something he had done in passing. After all, no matter what, they were all part of the same team. However, apart from land warfare, the others who had been saved by Chu Mu did not feel very good. This was because they all looked down on Chu Mu. Now, they had been saved by the person they looked down on. Chu Mu did not care what they were thinking. At this moment, the situation was critical, and he had to escape first. The pursuit continued. After the sword chi spirits gathered, there were even more of them, and the pursuit became even more intense. Quick, there's a palace up ahead. Let's hide in there first. Lu Zhongliao shouted. Everyone's spirits were shaken, and they instantly burst out at full speed, flying towards the somewhat ancient-looking palace. If they hid inside the palace, they would be surrounded by the spirit of the sword energy. They did not care about that anymore. There was no other way. If they did not hide inside and continued to chase after them, once their sword energy was exhausted, the spirit of the sword energy would catch up and kill them. If they hid in the palace, they could at least use the palace's terrain to deal with the sword chi spirits. The doors of the ancient palace were tightly shut, and there was a hole in the wall. Everyone flew in through the hole, and countless sword chi slammed into the walls of the broken palace. There seemed to be some seals left behind, but the walls of the palace were very tough, and they were able to resist the sword chi without breaking. As soon as everyone entered the palace, the sword chi spirits stopped their pursuit and wandered around the palace. This discovery made everyone let out a sigh of relief. Although they did not know why the sword chi spirits did not chase after them, they suddenly felt extremely sharp auras lock onto them. Immediately, their hair stood on end, and they all assumed battle stances. It turned out that there was already a group of people in this small ancient palace before them. This group of people seemed to treat this ancient palace as their territory. Their faces were unfriendly as they stared at Chu Mu and the others. The aura they emitted was extremely sharp and terrifying, causing people to tremble in fear. Suddenly, one of the people in this group stared at Chu Mu and sneered. "This is really a good opportunity. Chu Mu, we should settle the matter of the assessment site." A sarcastic voice sounded. Yu Byakuya stood up, took 3 steps and faced Chu Mu and sneered. "Byakuya, he is the disciple of the Flying Heaven Pavilion. Chu Mu?" A gloomy voice sounded. The one who spoke was a middle-aged man who looked similar to you, Byakuya. "That's right, cousin. It was him who took away the 9 reincarnation body-refining fruit that should have belonged to me." Yu Byakuya sneered. The faces of Lu Zhongliao and the others abruptly changed. They looked at Chu Mu with eyes full of shock. They were shocked that Chu Mu was able to steal a treasure from a 3-star Sword King with a powerful aura. Moreover, it was the rare 9 revolution body, refining fruit. Everyone, he has nothing to do with us. Suddenly, Li Quan spoke and took a few steps back to show his position. Lan Xian and Liang Shu hesitated a little and also took a few steps back. Shameless villain, if it wasn't for Chu Mu saving you, you would have died under the pursuit of the sword Qi spirits. Land warfare, said angrily. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He never thought that these 3 people would be so shameless. Lan Xian and Liang Shu's faces flashed with embarrassment. They didn't dare to look at Chu Mu or land warfare. On the contrary, Li Quan looked calm and refuted. That's one thing. I will repay you if I have the chance. But now, Chu Mu took the fruit first. It's a grudge that has been formed before. It has nothing to do with us. Although I was dissatisfied with Chu Mu's cultivation before, he has proven his strength during this period of time and saved me once, said Lu Shan. He then turned to Chu Mu. If you need me, I will stand by your side. Lu Zhongliao didn't say anything. He could feel the strength of the sword of Gojoseon. Among them, there must be someone stronger than him. If he fought, he would be at a disadvantage. He might be killed. However, he had protected Chu Mu before. If he gave up now, it would be, for a moment, Lu Zhongliao was in a dilemma. Li Quan, Lan Xian, and Liang Shu repaid kindness with enmity. Land warfare was filled with righteous indignation. Lu Shan's attitude and Lu Zhongliao's hesitation were all seen by Chu Mu. In an instant, Chu Mu made his decision. Without hesitation, Deshang used the burning blood transformation. The condensed essence blood was ignited in an instant. With a loud explosion, a tyrannical power burst out. That power surged and rolled endlessly. In an instant, it flooded Chu Mu's body. Without any hesitation, the violent thunder sacred sword was drawn. A blazing white thunderbolt, condensed the rules of metal and wind, was shot out in an instant. Earth class 2nd grade, Earth breaching sword skill. Wind Cutter. The Wind Cutter, which contained a trace of the power of lightning, was even more tyrannical. It rushed towards Yu Byakuya, causing Yu Byakuya's expression to change slightly. He quickly retreated and drew his sword. After using the sword skill, Chu Mu immediately used Deshang's imperial sword technique. Controlling the violent thunder sacred sword, he turned into a lightning sword light and shot out at an incomparably fast speed. In an instant, he shot out from the hole in the wall. After dodging the Wind Cutter's attack, Yu Byakuya was flustered and exasperated. He turned into a streak of light and shot towards the hole. The figure that Yu Byakuya called Cousin flashed. His speed was even faster. In an instant, he blocked Yu Byakuya's path. There's an army of sword Qi spirits outside. A soft sentence dispelled the anger in Yu Byakuya's heart. Yes, there was an army of sword Qi spirits outside. Chu Mu had escaped from here, but he had to face the pursuit of the army of sword Qi spirits. Whether or not he could survive was still a big problem. Chapter 10:23. In the Zhan Yuan secret territory, there were countless palaces. Outside an ancient palace, there were thousands of sword Qi spirits wandering around. Some of these sword Qi spirits had a fiery red aura, some had a golden aura, some had a blue aura, and so on. This meant that they were not ordinary sword Qi spirits, but elite sword Qi spirits. They were sword Qi spirits that had grasped some kind of rule power, and their strength was even more tyrannical. Suddenly, the thousands of wandering sword Qi spirits were like sharks that had smelled blood. They all turned towards the same direction. A pale red sword light, like a meteor, shot out from the broken wall of the ancient palace, leaving a long pale red flame tail behind. It instantly shot out from the broken wall of the ancient palace. breaking through the air at an extremely fast speed. Like hungry tigers pouncing on sheep, the sword chi spirits waved their chi swords without hesitation, shooting out beams of sword chi. The terrifying sword chi pierced through the void like a river of sword chi. It was ferocious and unstoppable. Without any hesitation, the faint red sword light shot up into the sky in an arc, avoiding the countless sword chi attacks. It suddenly changed direction in the air, and its speed actually doubled. In an instant, it flew over the sword chi spirits' heads and rapidly flew away. The sudden increase in speed was so fast that the sword chi spirits could not react in time. First using Deshang's burning blood transformation, then using Deshang's sword manipulation art, Chu Mu's speed was extremely fast. After rushing out of the ancient palace, he chanted a chant and waved his left hand, using the flying sword manipulation art. His speed increased once again. The flying sword manipulation art consumed a lot of sword yuan, but at this moment he had to use it in order to shake off the thousands of sword chi spirits. Otherwise, if he was chased down, he would most likely be killed. The sword chi spirits reacted one after another. They all changed directions and chased after Chu Mu. They looked like they would not give up until they caught up with Chu Mu and killed him. In the sky, there was a light red figure flying. Behind it, there were thousands of sword chi spirits chasing after it. Fortunately, the flying sky sword control technique was extremely fast, and the distance between the sword chi spirits and the sword chi spirits was increasing. Taking out a true yuan fruit, Chu Mu threw it into his mouth and swallowed it. Immediately, pure yuan energy spread out from the true yuan fruit, almost automatically transforming into sword yuan to replenish his energy. This allowed Chu Mu to continuously use the Flying Heaven Imperial Sword technique without falling into the awkward situation of exhausting his sword yuan. A quarter of an hour later, the thousands of sword chi spirits chasing after him had already disappeared. Even their auras could not be sensed. Chu Mu immediately stopped Deshang's burning blood transformation and Flying Heaven sword control technique. He took out a blood yang pill and consumed it. Landing on the ground, he used the hidden edge technique to restrain his aura fluctuations, reducing his life fluctuations to the minimum. Looking around, Chu Mu found that the surroundings were empty without any obstacles. Fortunately, there was no sword chi spirit, which made Chu Mu heave a sigh of relief. If I didn't have the Flying Heaven Imperial Sword technique, I'm afraid it would be difficult to escape. Chu Mu could not help but feel a little afraid. Using the Divine Wilderness Sword technique would naturally increase his speed. But the problem was that using the Divine Wilderness Sword technique required 10 breaths of time. During this 10 breaths of time, it was best not to move, or it would be greatly prolonged. Therefore, if he did not have the Flying Heaven Imperial Sword technique to increase his speed, he would not be able to shake off the sword chi spirits. With the strength of a single person, it was impossible to fight against thousands of sword chi spirits. He would be killed in a few moves. After letting out a sigh of relief, Chu Mu took out a large amount of high-grade origin crystals and crushed them to absorb. The effect of the true yuan fruit was not bad, but one was still too little. There are still 19 true yuan fruits left. I'll keep them for now. Chu Mu thought to himself, if I can obtain a few hundred true yuan fruits, maybe my cultivation will be able to break through to the second heavenly layer. At that time, the quantity and quality of my sword yuan will increase by several times. The power of my sword skills will also be stronger, and I will be able to use the Flying Heaven Imperial Sword technique for longer. As he cultivated, he paid attention to his surroundings. When his sword yuan had completely recovered, his spiritual sense had also naturally recovered, and he began to move again. Previously, he was moving as a team, but now he was moving alone. Looking back in the direction he came from, the ancient palace had already disappeared from his sight. Yu Byakuya should be killed. Li Quan should also be killed. Chu did not regret saving Li Quan. It was only because they were temporary teammates that he did it in passing. No matter how much Li Quan mocked Chu Mu could not be bothered to bicker with him, because their attitudes were different. But afterwards, when facing Yu Byakuya and the others, Li Quan's actions and words had directly angered Chu Mu. Letting such a despicable person live in this world was a stain on the world. As for the others, land warfare was still acceptable, Lu San was not a problem, and Lu Zhonglia was not trustworthy. As for the two females sort of Gojosian, as long as they did not provoke him again, he could also ignore them. As this thought flashed through his mind, Chu Mu chose a direction and began to move forward. He restrained his aura so that he would not easily attract the attention of the sword chi spirits. The sword chi spirits did not have any facial features. They relied on the aura to determine and lock onto their targets. The stronger the aura, the easier it was to attract the sword chi spirits. The Wild Thunder's sacred sword turned into a blazing white thunderbolt and slashed through the air. Its speed was extremely fast, causing a terrifying sonic boom. Layers of ripples surged out like ripples on water. Just this sword was like a divine dragon tearing through the sky. The terrifying power of the earthquake instantly shattered the head of a level 1 sword chi spirit. Turning around, the sword was like a gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves, cutting the other level 1 sword chi spirit in half. The terrifying vibration power caused the two halves of the sword chi spirit's body to shatter. Actual combat was the best way to test and improve one's strength. In the life and death battle with the sword chi spirits, Chu Mu felt that his swordsmanship had begun to improve again. Although it was slow, he could feel that it was a feeling that he had not felt for a long time. Ever since his swordsmanship domain had reached the pinnacle of level 10 and his swordsmanship had reached the level of demigod, Chu Mu's swordsmanship had not improved for a long time. Every sword chi spirit had mastered a unique swordsmanship. As he battled with the sword chi spirits, Chu Mu discovered that although the swordsmanship of these sword chi spirits was different, they were essentially the same. Simply put, the swordsmanship of the sword chi spirits was actually derived from the same swordsmanship. In other words, the swordsmanship of the sword chi spirits was comprehended from the same thing. Although they looked different, the core was the same. Chu Mu's intuition told him that the core of the sword chi spirit's swordsmanship was not simple. If he could comprehend it, it would definitely be of great help to his swordsmanship. Perhaps he could even make a breakthrough and reach the level of demigod in swordsmanship. 5 ordinary level 1 sword chi spirits were consecutively killed by Chu Mu's sword. The tyrannical earthquake force was invincible. In the end, only one elite level 2 sword chi spirit was left. This was a level 2 sword chi spirit that had mastered the law of water. The light blue sword chi seemed to be condensed from water. It was as if it was compressed into a river. When it was waved, the sound of flowing water could be heard. A swordsmanship was displayed. Every move was like a flowing river, causing the air to become like water, which affected Chu Mu's movements. The seemingly weak swordsmanship had a hidden edge. It was fierce and restrained. When it was used, Chu Mu's expression changed slightly. Countering each move, Chu Mu and the elite level 2 sword chi spirit fought. Fortunately, there were no other sword chi spirits around. Otherwise, Chu Mu would not dare to do so. It was as if he was dancing on the tip of a knife, walking on a tightrope. Below him were countless sharp cones. If he accidentally fell, he would be riddled with holes and die a horrible death. This elite level 2 sword aura spirit was merciless when it attacked. Every slash carried the goal of killing Chu Mu. It was concise and direct, and it fully displayed the power of the water rule. If there were a few more, Chu Mu was sure that he would not be their opponent. Dodging, blocking, counterattacking with his sword, he was fully focused on the battle. He absorbed the essence of the elite level 2 sword chi spirit's swordsmanship and adapted to it. "It's all thanks to you," Chu Mu said inwardly as he counterattacked. This was because the essence of the elite level 2 sword chi spirits, swordsmanship, had already been absorbed by him and integrated into his own swordsmanship. With a slash of his sword, the light blue law of water emerged. In an instant, layers of ripples spread out in the air. The edges of the light blue were entwined with countless blazing white electric arcs, crazily jumping around, causing people's scalps to go numb. The elite level 2 sword chi spirit did not have a scalp, so it would not go numb. However, its sword was immediately affected, as if it was dancing in the water. Its speed and accuracy decreased. On the other hand, Chu Mu entered the zone. His sword was free and unrestrained. The light blue trajectory twined around the elite level 2 sword chi spirit's body like a silk thread. In an instant, it was pulled in like a light blue net, causing the elite level 2 sword chi spirit to be unable to move. He mercilessly waved his sword. This sword contained the law of gold and the law of wind. It activated the earthquake force and integrated with the power of thunder from the violent thunder sacred sword. It was as if it wanted to cut open the space of the Zhan Yuan secret realm. The sword slashed across the neck of the elite level 2 sword chi spirit. The terrifying earthquake force shattered the neck of the elite level 2 sword chi spirit. Its head flew high into the air, and a quarter of its head was shattered. However, the elite level 2 sword chi spirit was not something a level 1 sword chi spirit could compare to. Chu Mu could kill a level 1 sword chi spirit in one strike with the earthquake force, but he could not kill a level 2 elite level 2 sword chi spirit in one strike. The shattered neck of the elite level 2 sword chi spirit was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. The surrounding yuan chi of the heaven and earth and a fierce aura surged towards it. Once again, Chu Mu waved his sword. Shwa, shwa, shwa. In an instant, he slashed out more than 10 times. Each slash shattered a part of the elite level 2 sword chi spirit. After more than 10 slashes, the elite level 2 sword chi spirit that had not fully recovered was finally killed. It turned into a chaotic yuan chi of the heaven and earth and a sharp aura, dissipating into the air and gradually dissipating. Killing the sword chi spirit did not give him any treasures, but to Chu Mu, it was already a very good treasure to increase his swordsmanship. With a shake of his sword, the sound of thunder exploded. The sound of the sword resonated in all directions. Chapter 1024. Chop, with the rule of gold, sharp and unbreakable. Slice had the rules of wind. It was light, swift, and all-pervasive. Thrusts were imbued with the laws of lightning. They were swift, explosive, and incomparably violent. Sword after sword, move after move, move after move, the power of laws alternately fused into the sword, causing every sword strike to be extremely sharp. The sword strikes were sometimes swift, sometimes light, sometimes fierce, sometimes violent, sometimes ethereal, sometimes slow. Under Chu Mu's sword, a level 2 elite sword chi spirit was emitting a faint purple glow. Countless arcs of electricity jumped around it as it was hit by sword after sword. The place where it was hit immediately exploded, turning into yuan chi and dissipating. Before it could recover, it was hit again. Chu Mu didn't know how many sword chi spirits he had encountered since entering the Zhan Yuan realm. As long as he encountered a sword chi spirit, he would immediately judge the situation. If it was a large group of sword chi spirits, he would restrain his aura and go around. If it was a small group of sword chi spirits, and most of them were level 1 sword chi spirits, he would take the risk and kill them. Although he wouldn't get any treasures, he could gain experience from a life and death battle, improving his fighting skills and sword arts. What Chu Mu liked the most was to fight with the second-level elite sword aura spirit. From the beginning, he was slightly inferior when facing the second-level elite sword aura spirit and needed a period of time to get used to the rhythm. Now he could suppress the second-level elite sword aura spirit. Chu Mu's improvement was not small. Of course, this kind of improvement referred to his sword arts fighting. After many battles, he realized that as long as he was close to the sword chi spirits, they would often choose to fight with sword arts. With Chu Mu's current sword art strength, he could suppress level 2 elite sword chi spirits one-on-one. If he faced 2 level 2 elite sword chi spirits at the same time, it would be a bit troublesome. But after a while, he could still kill level 2 elite sword chi spirits. If there were 3, he wouldn't be able to kill them without being injured. If there were more than 3, Chu Mu wouldn't make a move because he knew he wasn't their opponent. And if it was a normal level 3 sword chi spirit, he could fight one-on-one and barely kill it. If it was a level 3 elite sword chi spirit, he would have to avoid it. Every time a sword chi spirit leveled up, it would not only increase in strength, but also in sword arts. The difference in strength was very obvious. The Zhenyuan realm was indeed a very good place. Chu Mu felt that even if he didn't get any Zhenyuan fruit or treasures, just the life and death battle with the sword chi spirits would be a great harvest. Chu Mu, sword chi spirit, and sword chi spirit, 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 chi spirit, chi, sword. The sword aura was sometimes violent and sometimes gentle, each with its own unique characteristics. The elite second-level sword aura spirit was very pitifully dismembered by Chu Mu's violent thunder sacred sword. What a cruel human! Yi, sword, 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 sword of sword. My sword arts have already reached the peak of demigod. If I make another breakthrough, I will enter the divine realm. At that time, the power of my sword arts will be even stronger. Chu Mu thought. His figure flew like the wind and lightning, and appeared on a huge rock beside a 4-meter-tall Zhenyuan tree. That's right, Chu Mu didn't know how many sword chi spirits he had killed, nor did he know how much time and distance he had traveled in the Zhenyuan realm. Finally, he encountered the second Zhenyuan tree. Hundreds of branches crisscrossed with many Zhenyuan fruits hanging on them, which made Chu Mu's eyes shine. Although the repeated life and death sword fights with the sword aura spirit had allowed him to continuously increase his fighting experience and sword technique attainments, this was already a huge gain. But if he could obtain other gains on top of this, Chu Mu wouldn't reject it. Instead, he would very much welcome it. A total of 230 low-grade Zhen Yuan fruits. With a glance, Chu Mu immediately judged the number of Zhenyuan fruits on the Zhenyuan tree, which was more than 200. As for the grade, it wasn't difficult to judge. He could tell by feeling the aura fluctuations emitted by the Zhenyuan fruits. The first time he had obtained low-grade Zhenyuan fruits was when he was in a team with Lu Zhongliao and the others. He had proven his strength and was only given 20 fruits. At that time, he was stronger than the others. Now he could obtain 230 low-grade Zhenyuan fruits alone, which was more than 11 times more than before. No one would compete with him. To avoid any more trouble, Chu Mu reached out with both hands. In an instant, it was as if there were thousands of hands and fingers reaching out at the same time. The 230 low-grade Zhenyuan fruits were all collected into the space ring. There are a total of 249 low-grade true Yuan fruits. I wonder if the pure Yuan Qi they contain will allow my cultivation to break through to the second layer of creation realm in one go. Chu Mu thought to himself as he looked at the true Yuan tree. The difference between the first sky of Fortune Realm and the second sky of Fortune Realm was 3 times. If he could break through to the second sky of Fortune Realm, even if it was just the beginning, Chu Mu's strength would definitely increase many times and become more powerful. He looked around. It was empty. There were no swordsmen or sword chi spirits. After thinking for a while, he quickly set up various seals around him. Then he opened the space of battle beasts and summoned Boang. In the space of battle beasts, Bawang was in a state of deep sleep. It would constantly absorb energy and slowly increase its strength. When it left the space of battle beasts, it would wake up. If it wanted to increase its strength, it had to cultivate by itself or consume energy to accumulate. When it reached its limit, it would break through. Master. When Bawang came out, it looked around curiously. It instinctively felt a little strange. This is the Zhen Yuan secret realm. Chu Mu used the shortest and clearest words to explain the current situation to Bawang. Now, I plan to break through to the second sky of Fortune Realm. Watch from the side for me. No problem, Master. Don't worry and break through. Bawang immediately said, waving the whip sword in its hand. Chu Mu nodded. Although Bawang was still a level 1 Beast King, its combat strength and fighting talent were amazing. It could easily fight against an ordinary level 2 Beast King. Even if it faced an ordinary Samsung, Sword of Gojosian, it could still contend with it for a while. Of course, if it encountered an elite level 3 Sword Chi Spirit or a powerful Samsung, Sword of Gojosian, Bawang would not be its opponent. However, the possibility of this was not very high. It should not be so lucky to encounter them. Inside the layers of seals, Chu Mu sat down cross-legged. He removed all distracting thoughts and moved the Sky Baron sword energy. He circulated the essence, aura, all over his body. It was like the water of a long river. After circulating a large circle, he adjusted his essence, energy, and spirit to the peak. When breaking through, one could not be careless. The slightest carelessness would lead to failure. Although failure was not very dangerous, it was impossible to break through a second time in a short period of time. Chu Mu planned to break through in one go. In the Zhan Yuan secret realm, he needed strength too much. Otherwise, if he encountered you, Byakuya, and the others, he would also be in a situation where he had to run for his life. In the face of setbacks, Chu Mu would never be discouraged. This was because he knew that it was only temporary. However, if he wanted to get rid of this awkward situation, there was only one way, and that was to increase his strength and become strong enough. He took out the Zhan Yuan fruits. There were a total of 249 Zhan Yuan fruits. The vitality contained in the Zhan Yuan fruits was very pure. It could be said that it was 100% pure. There was no doubt that there would not be any side effects, even if he took a lot of them. However, the problem was that taking Zhan Yuan fruits was the same as taking pills. It required cultivation talent. The higher one's cultivation talent was, the better the absorption effect of the Zhan Yuan fruits. On the other hand, if one's cultivation talent was low, the absorption effect of the Zhan Yuan fruits would be worse. Cultivation talent had always been Chu Mu's shortcoming. It was the biggest and most obvious shortcoming. Therefore, he did not expect the absorption effect of the Zhan Yuan fruits to be good. This was also why he was not sure whether the 249 Zhan Yuan fruits could allow his cultivation to reach the peak in one go and break through to the second sky of Fortune Realm. Fight! True Yuan fruit after true Yuan fruit flew into Chu Mu's mouth and was bitten open. The liquefied Yuan Qi liquid flowed down his throat and into his mouth. Immediately, it transformed into pure and dense Yuan Qi that surged like a river into his body. The revolving sky, desolate, sword essence, swept over like a giant beast opening its mouth and swallowing without restraint. Wave after wave of pure vitality juice was swallowed into the sky, desolate, sword essence. The vitality juice of the Zhan Yuan fruits, which had reached 100% purity, was very easy to absorb. After just one big cycle, it turned into the sky, desolate, sword essence. Its purity was not bad at all. The Zhan Yuan fruits were not something that high-grade vitality crystals could compare to. The number of Zhan Yuan fruits around him gradually decreased. Chu Mu's sky desolate sword essence was also constantly increasing. Previously, it had reached the peak of the first sky, and now it was moving towards the limit of the first sky. When the number of Zhen Yuan fruits was less than 100, Chu Mu's Sky Desolate sword essence had reached the limit of the first sky of Fortune Realm. It could be considered half a step into the second sky of Fortune Realm, but it was still a little short. Realizing this, Chu Mu was immediately overjoyed. He thought to himself that there was indeed a great chance of breaking through to the second sky of Fortune Realm. Sweeping up everything, all the Zhanyuan fruits were swallowed into his mouth and turned into vitality juice. When it entered his body, it suddenly rolled out like the surging waves of the sea, turning into a rolling tsunami. The momentum was so fierce that it almost destroyed the pure Sky Desolate sword essence in his body. The Sky Desolate sword essence also showed amazing tenacity. With Chu Mu's meridians as the battlefield, it fought with the vitality juice. During the fight, it constantly swallowed the vitality juice and turned it into Sky Desolate sword essence. Under this situation, the vitality juice gradually decreased, and the amount of Sky Desolate sword essence increased again, although it was only a slight increase. "Break through for me!" An angry roar sounded in his heart. It was as if he had cut off all means of retreat. He would not give up until he achieved his goal. All the vitality juice had turned into Sky Desolate sword essence. The tyrannical and majestic Sky Desolate sword essence flowed in the tough meridians, surging endlessly. It was like a mountain flood, like the overflowing sea, and nothing could stop it. Vaguely, Chu Mu seemed to hear a series of roars. It was the sound of the sea roaring. He kept moving, forgetting everything. He only remembered one thought: break through. Unknowingly, there seemed to be the sound of something breaking. From Chu Mu's body, a tyrannical and astonishing aura gushed out. Chapter 10:25. It was as if a volcano that had been dormant for thousands of years had accumulated an enormous amount of power and was about to erupt. An incomparably tyrannical aura gushed out from Chu Mu's body, causing the air to flow chaotically and the surrounding seals to creak as if they were about to collapse. Bawang was alarmed. Looking at Chu Mu, he was immediately delighted. He knew that Chu Mu's strength had become even more powerful. The tyrannical sword yuan was surging in his meridians, surging like waves, endless, like a great river flowing east. An incomparably carefree feeling surged throughout his body, causing Chu Mu to have the impulse to soar into the sky and roar to the sky. But he forcibly suppressed this impulse. Doing so in such a place would undoubtedly attract firepower, which was very unwise. Forcibly suppressing the carefree feeling, Chu Mu wholeheartedly controlled the more tyrannical sword yuan, constantly circulating it in his body. After one great cycle after another, he gradually mastered it. Generally speaking, when one's cultivation base had just broken through, due to the surge in sword yuan, one's control would be greatly reduced. It would take some time to readjust and completely master it. Chu Mu was in this process. After a full 24 great cycles, Chu Mu finally regained control of the skyrocketing sword yuan and was able to control it as he wished. The majestic sword yuan was injected into his dantian, forming a sword yuan lake. Chu Mu once again operated the hidden edge technique, and his tyrannical aura began to converge until it was difficult to detect. Getting up and breaking the many seals, Chu Mu moved his hands and feet. He only felt that the strength of his body seemed to have increased due to the impact of the sword yuan after his cultivation base had broken through. He did not know if it was an illusion, but every movement of his was filled with tyrannical power, and the power of his divine sense was also much more tyrannical. With my current strength, I should be able to easily kill an ordinary third-level sword chi spirit. Even if I face an elite third-level sword chi spirit, I should be able to fight and kill it. Chu Mu thought to himself. However, I actually used up all 249 low-grade true origin fruits before I was able to break through. If I had a third-grade cultivation talent, I might not even need 200 true origin fruits to successfully break through. He thought to himself and could not help but feel helpless about his low cultivation talent. Perhaps I can find more vital essence fruits in the vital essence secret realm and raise my cultivation base to the third sky of fate realm in a short period of time. Chumu thought, and could not help but feel somewhat expectant. If he cultivated normally in the outside world, it would take him decades to cultivate to the third sky of fate realm. But if he had enough vital essence fruits, he could raise his cultivation base to in a short period of time. The increase in cultivation base was not only a direct increase in the power of the sword origin, but also an increase in the quantity of the sword origin. That not only meant that the power of the sword skills would be stronger, but it also meant that he could perform more sword skills and even higher grade sword skills. In short, the increase in sword origin was very important. It was one of the symbols of a swordsman's strength, and it was indispensable. Another important point was that if Chumu could obtain more vital essence fruits, it would undoubtedly save a lot of time to cultivate sword origin. He could use this time to understand and master the transformation of the laws, and strive to master the original sword skills again. His strength would increase in a straight line. Full of motivation, Chumu continued to move forward with Bawang. He did not have any specific goal, and he only wanted to move forward, continuously move forward and search for more powerful sword chi spirits and more vital essence fruits. Master, watch my Bawang's triple combo. Bawang shouted in a low voice. Swish, swish, swish. The whip sword in his hand instantly swung. An extremely sharp tip pierced through the void like a sharp awl that could pierce through all hard objects. The 3 moves of one sword formed a straight line. The 3 consecutive strikes hit the same spot on the sword chi spirit's head. These 3 strikes all contained the power of the rule of gold and were incomparably sharp. They also contained the explosive power of the tyrant's tyrannical body. They were as powerful as thunder. This was the first sword technique that the tyrant had created after many battles. This ordinary first-level sword chi spirit was instantly defeated by Bawang's triple combo. At the same time, Chumu also killed his opponent, an ordinary second-level sword chi spirit. Chumu's cultivation had reached the early stage of the second heaven of creation realm, and he had become a 2-star sword of Gojoseon. His strength had increased tremendously, and even an ordinary third-level sword chi spirit was no match for Chumu, not to mention an ordinary second-level sword chi spirit. Currently, only an elite third-level sword chi spirit could give Chumu some pressure. Every sword of Gojoseon that entered the vital essence realm was fighting. Some sword of Gojoseon were killed in battle, either by the sword chi spirit's attack or by the other sword of Gojoseon's sword. Fighting for benefits was always the mainstream. Chumu tried his best to avoid meeting with the other sword kings. He didn't want to waste time on fighting for benefits. Instead, he wanted to spend more time fighting with the sword aura spirits and improving his sword techniques. In front of them, a group of sword chi spirits gathered, causing Chumu and Bawang to stop moving forward. The powerful aura caused Chumu to feel shocked. With a glance, he locked onto the target of the powerful aura emitting from the group of sword aura spirits. A purple and red sword chi spirit intertwined with each other. The purple and red lines looked like some kind of mysterious power tattooed on the body of the sword chi spirit. A terrifying aura rippled through the air. The air around the purple and red sword chi spirit intertwined to form a mysterious pattern seemed to be squeezed out. The aura fluctuation of a third-level sword chi spirit. Chumu could clearly feel it from afar. He muttered to himself, "The purple lines are the power of the rule of thunder, and the red lines are the power of the rule of fire. Only an elite third-level sword chi spirit can master the rule of thunder or fire. But this third-level sword chi spirit has mastered 2 types of rule power." Chumu could not help but recall the introduction of sword chi spirits that Lezhongliao had explained earlier. The special rule of the vital energy secret realm limited the cultivation of those who entered. They could not exceed the third sky of Creation Realm, and the highest was the peak of the third sky of Creation Realm. Therefore, the highest level a sword chi spirit could reach was the third level, or the peak of the third level. Of course, some swordsmen had special cultivation methods, which led to their sword origin being denser than other swordsmen of the same level. Similarly, there were differences in strength between sword chi spirits of the same level. The quantity and quality of sword chi possessed by a powerful sword chi spirit would be greater than other sword chi spirits of the same level. The aura fluctuation of this third-level sword chi spirit with purple and red colors was more powerful than an ordinary third-level sword chi spirit. In addition to the powerful rule power of the rule of thunder and the rule power of fire, it was extremely terrifying. A sword chi spirit that grasped two types of rule power was defined as a commander-level sword chi spirit. A sword chi spirit that grasped three types of rule power was defined as a monarch-level sword chi spirit. Legend had it that a sword chi spirit that grasped four types of rule power was defined as a monarch-level sword chi spirit. As for whether there were sword chi spirits that grasped more than 4, 5, or even 6 types of rule power, Chumu did not know. At least since the opening of the vital energy secret realm, it had never appeared. Even an emperor-level sword chi spirit had only appeared 3 times in the thousands of years since the opening of the vital energy secret realm. Even a monarch-level sword chi spirit rarely appeared. To be able to encounter a commander-level third-level sword chi spirit, he did not know whether he was lucky or unlucky. If compared to a swordsman, the sword chi spirit grasped very little rule power. Even the extremely rare emperor-level sword chi spirit only grasped 4 types of rule power. On the other hand, most of the sword of Gojosian that entered the vital energy secret realm had grasped at least 4 types of rule power. There were even 5, 6, or even 7 types of rule power. However, the rule power that swordsmen and sword chi spirits grasped was different. To put it simply, the rule power that a swordsman grasped was not directly related to the strength of his strength. This was because after grasping the rule power, one still had to be proficient in using it. Only after grasping the rule power could one turn it into strength. One had to go through the stages of grasping, familiarizing, mastering, and controlling. In order to fuse the rule power and use it at the same time, one had to have enough strength to support it in addition to grasping the rule power. In other words, one had to use sword energy and divine thought power as a carrier. Sword chi spirits were different. Once they grasped any rule power, they would immediately reach the level of controlling it. They would be able to fully utilize the power of the rule power. For example, if an elite-level sword chi spirit possessed a certain rule power, it would be able to fully utilize the power of the rule power. If a commander-level sword chi spirit possessed 2 types of rule power, it would be able to fully utilize the power of the rule power. It would also be able to fuse the 2 types of rule power as it pleased. By the same logic, a monarch rank spirit of sword chi could control 3 types of power of laws at will, while an emperor rank spirit of sword chi could control 4 types of power of laws at will, unleashing 100% of its power. It was terrifying just thinking about it. A Samsung sword of Gojosian could perform an Earth tier rank 4 sword skill, but it would consume a lot of sword energy and spiritual sense. At most, it could only perform 2 to 4 times before it had to be replenished. On the other hand, an Emperor-level sword chi spirit could perform an Earth tier rank 4 sword skill without any restrictions. What kind of situation would that be? A rank 4 sword of Gojosian was a mainstream sword skill. It was the strongest sword skill that most sword of Gojosian could master. As his thoughts drifted away, Chumu gathered his thoughts and stared at the commander level 3 sword chi spirit as he pondered. Every attack of a commander level 3 sword chi spirit had the power of an Earth tier rank 2 sword skill. Would he be able to fight it? Passing by the group of hundreds of sword chi spirits, Chu Mu saw a low-grade true yuan tree. There were many low-grade true yuan fruits on it. Roughly counting, there were more than 300 fruits. Chu Mu's pupils shrank. Right at this moment, an excited voice came from another direction. Chapter 10:26. So many true elemental fruits. Kill that group of sword chi spirits. Excited shouts came from afar. Chu Mu and Bawang, who were restraining their auras, turned their heads to look. They saw 8 figures flying through the air. Before they arrived, their swords had already been unsheathed. Dazzling rays of light tore through the sky, accompanied by sharp, ear-piercing noises. Sword skills were displayed one after another. It was as if thunder had descended from the heavens, like a torrent, bombarding the group of hundreds of sword chi spirits. As soon as the 8 sword of Gojosian attacked, they immediately angered the group of sword chi spirits. Sword chi condensed, and tyrannical sword chi broke through the air. Hundreds of sword chi spirits. All of them were level 3 sword chi spirits. There was 1 commander level sword chi spirit, 6 elite level sword chi spirits, and the rest were ordinary level sword chi spirits. Such a lineup was already very powerful. Sword skills and sword chi collided. Under the collision, an earth-shattering, terrifying energy exploded. The earth crumbled. In the distance, Chu Mu and Bawang were also hit by the hurricane. Their robes fluttered, but because they were far away and had restrained their auras as much as possible, they weren't discovered. Chu Mu also planned to take this opportunity to see the level 3 commander level sword chi spirit strength. He wanted to see how tyrannical it was. The 3rd rank commander rank sword aura spirit waved its arm, and the surrounding sword aura spirits immediately moved. They seemed to form a formation, causing Chu Mu to be slightly shocked. Could it be that the intelligence of a commander level sword chi spirit had reached such a high level? It was impossible for a sword chi spirit that only had instincts. A sword chi spirit that had intelligence and grasped a terrifying power was even more terrifying. Fortunately, the commander-level sword chi spirit's intelligence was limited. Therefore, the formation it formed was very rough. The strength of the 8 sword of Gojosian was also not to be underestimated. With cooperation, they charged into the group of sword chi spirits. One of them was very ferocious. With 1 sword, he could kill an ordinary level 3 sword chi spirit, at least a 5-star sword of Gojosian, or even a 6-star sword of Gojosian. Looking at the ferocious figure, Chu Mu thought to himself, why wasn't it an advanced sword of Gojosian? Very simple. There were only a dozen advanced sword of Gojosian that had entered the vital energy secret realm, and Chu Mu remembered them all. Although this intermediate sword of Gojosian's cultivation was suppressed to the peak of the 3rd heavenly layer of creation realm, the quality of his sword energy was better than an ordinary Samsung sword of Gojosian. The power of his divine sense was also stronger than an ordinary Samsung sword of Gojosian. In addition, his understanding and mastery of the power of rules was also above an ordinary Samsung sword of Gojosian. His strength was very terrifying. Among these 8 sword of Gojosian, the other 7 were all Samsung sword of Gojosian. The real Samsung sword of Gojosian was proficient in cooperation. However, the sword chi spirits were not to be trifled with either. A battle of life and death began. In terms of numbers, the sword chi spirits were obviously more than 10 times more. Although the intermediate sword of Gojosian was ferocious, it was still blocked by the commander-level sword of Gojosian in the end. As soon as it was blocked, the 8 people's cooperation was immediately interrupted. The 6 elite level 3 sword chi spirits each fought one of the 8 people, immediately causing the 8 sword chi spirits to fight on their own. Their combined strength was naturally stronger, but once they were separated and fought on their own, their strength decreased by more than a few %. First, Chu Mu looked at the battle between the elite level 3 sword chi spirits. Then his gaze focused on the commander level 3 sword chi spirit. What exquisite swordsmanship! After just a few glances, Chu-Mu sighed in admiration. The swordsmanship mastered by the sword chi spirits was of the same origin. However, the stronger the sword chi spirit was, the more perfect and exquisite its swordsmanship would be. Every sword would be more exquisite and powerful. Even Chu-Mu was shocked by the commander level 3 sword chi spirits swordsmanship. Although the intermediate sword of Gojosian was strong, under the attacks of the commander level sword chi spirit, it gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. A blood-curdling scream sounded. One of the Samsung sword of Gojosian was cut into pieces by several sword chi spirits. This was because the sword chi spirits were not only the commander level sword chi spirit and the 6 elite level 3 sword chi spirits. There were also dozens of normal level 3 sword chi spirits. Once their numbers increased, they could not be underestimated. The appearance of the first death alarmed the others. Soon, the second Samsung sword of Gojosian was killed. With the death of the sword of Gojosian, the elite level 3 sword chi spirits were free. They surrounded and attacked the other Samsung sword of Gojosian. Soon, another 2 Samsung sword of Gojosian died on the spot. 8 people came excitedly, but 4 of them died. This made the remaining people's faces turn green. The opponents are too strong. Retreat. That intermediate sword king suddenly erupted with power. After pushing back the commander-level sword chi spirit with a single sword strike, he quickly pulled himself back, soared into the sky, and desperately fled into the distance. The other 3 Samsung sword of Gojosian also exploded with power. They used their secret techniques to forcefully increase their strength. After repelling their opponents, they flew into the sky and escaped. They did not use their secret techniques before because they planned to use them at the most critical moment. They did not expect that they had underestimated the strength of these sword chi spirits. Out of the 8 people who had come, 4 had died, and the remaining 4 had fled in panic. The commander-grade sword chi spirits and the other sword chi spirits all started to attack. Terrifying chi swords tore through the air, and even though they didn't kill the 4 of them, they were still heavily injured. It seemed that this group of sword chi spirits was guarding the Zhan Yuan tree. Therefore, they did not chase after them. Otherwise, the 4 sword of Gojosian might not have been able to escape. 1 commander level 3 sword chi spirit, 6 elite level 3 sword chi spirits, 20 normal level 3 sword chi spirits. Chu-Mu pondered. The power of the sword chi spirits was too horrifying. Once a swordsman was hit, he would be injured. It would not be easy for him to recover once he was injured. However, the sword chi spirits could recover quickly. As long as they were not defeated, they could quickly return to their peak state. That alone made them difficult to kill. An intermediate sword of Gojosian and 4 other Samsung sword of Gojosian died. However, they only managed to kill dozens of normal level 3 sword chi spirits. In the end, they fled in panic. Chu-Mu did not think that he was stronger than them. However, he was unwilling to give up on the more than 300 yuan fruits. What should he do? Bawang was also waiting for Chu-Mu's decision. He was only a beast king, powerful and belligerent. He knew that with his current strength, rushing into the group of sword chi spirits was tantamount to suicide. How good would it be if I could fight one-on-one with that commander level 3 sword chi spirit? Chu-Mu thought to himself. However, there were other sword chi spirits nearby. With Bawang's strength, there was no way he could restrain them. He would be brutally dismembered in an instant. Just look at the disfigured corpses on the ground. His thoughts turned rapidly, one idea after another. Using the divine desolate sword art will increase the power of the sword chi by 10 times. The The power of the sword Qi will be comparable to the normal Samsung sword of Gojoseon. Using Deshang's burning blood transformation will increase my strength by 3 times. It will be comparable to the powerful Samsung sword of Gojoseon. Chu Mu silently calculated his strength after using the sword Qi spirit. In this state, if I use the immortal sword intent and the power of law, and use the earth tremor to the extreme, it will be enough to kill any ordinary level 3 sword Qi spirit. Even an elite level 3 sword Qi spirit would not be able to block one strike from me. His brain rapidly worked. In his mental world, all the terrain and sword aura spirits in front of him were simulated. Chu Mu began to use his powerful soul ability to deduce the virtual battle situation and simulate it. Continuous simulation, continuous calculation. Every step, every dodge, every attack trajectory, everything was calculated in detail. There could not be the slightest deviation. Every sword Qi spirit's counterattack, their movement, the trajectory of their sword Qi spirit's attack, and so on, Chu Mu had to fully consider and integrate them into the simulation, into his simulated battle. The 6 elite level 3 sword Qi spirits and the most important commander level 3 sword Qi spirit. Boang did not speak. He could also see that Chu Mu was in a strange state. His eyes became dark and deep, as if they could swallow everything in the world. Nothing could escape from them. It was extremely terrifying. Cold, emotionless, mysterious, and profound. His mind force and spiritual force were constantly consumed. But Chu Mu did not notice. He continued to simulate and calculate, and whenever he made a mistake, he would immediately restart. Chu Mu rarely did this kind of simulation because the burden was too great. Moreover, he failed time and time again. Whenever he reached a certain point, he would be killed by the sword Qi spirits. Today he had no choice but to do this unless he wanted to give up on the 300+ true essence fruits. Chu Mu was very clear that he was not a sword Qi spirit. He did not have the ability to continuously recover as long as it was not destroyed. Ability to continuously recover? A thought flashed through his mind. Chu Mu's deep eyes suddenly lit up as he thought of the wood aspect in his body. The vigorous vitality could increase his self-healing ability by 10s or even 100s of times. Light injuries could be healed in just a few breaths. It did not affect his strength, and he could also rapidly recover from serious injuries. This was also one of his advantages, one of his abilities. He had to add it into the simulation. After adding in his powerful self-healing ability, Chu Mu's simulation progress increased by a lot, and he was no longer stuck. Time slowly passed, and the sword Qi spirits regained their calm. There were only 4 broken corpses and a pool of blood left on the ground, indicating that there had been a battle and death. In the distance, 2 figures were hiding. They had restrained their auras, making them seem like inanimate objects that were difficult to discover. Bit by bit he deduced. Although it was slow, there was still progress. Gradually, Chu Mu's eyes became deep, dark, and mysterious again, absorbing all the light. In the simulation, Boang was naturally considered. How could he share some of the pressure for Chu Mu without being seriously injured or dying? Suddenly, Chu Mu's eyes shot out an intense light. At the same time, an indifferent voice entered Boang's ears. It was said in the most concise and clear way, allowing Boang to understand. Just as he finished speaking, Chu Mu used the divine wilderness sword art, compressing his tyrannical sword essence into divine wilderness sword essence. He took out the blood yang pill and kept it in his mouth. Then, he used Deshang's burning blood transformation. Chapter 10:27. The tyrannical rules of lightning merged with the divine, desolate sword energy, instantly releasing an incomparably tyrannical power into his legs. His legs slightly bent, the muscles on his thighs were like rocks, the muscles on his calves instantly swelled up, the veins protruding. Every muscle was vibrating at a high speed. The earthquake was activated at the same time. Accompanied by the sound of electric arcs, Purple-colored lightning condensed and exploded under Chu Mu's feet. The soles of his feet fiercely stomped on the hard ground, and a shocking explosion rang out. Amidst the splashing of dirt, Chu Mu's body was like a cannonball that left the barrel. With an incomparably powerful posture, he streaked across a purple-colored lightning, tearing apart the vast sky as he charged straight towards the group of sword aura spirits. 2 holes were blasted open on the ground. Chu Mu's entire body was wrapped in purple lightning arcs and pale red bloodlight. They intertwined to form a purple-red light shadow, falling down from the sky like a meteor. Dragging a 12-meter-long flame tail, it burned the void and left a long trail behind, as if plowing through space. When Chu Mu moved, the group of sword chi spirits immediately felt it. However, Chu Mu, who was fully prepared and adjusted to his peak state, instantly exploded with his tyrannical power, exploding with his fastest speed, like a bolt of lightning splitting the sky. His right hand held the violent thunder sacred sword tightly, and his left hand held a low-grade sacred sword. With both swords in hand, in an instant he crossed the sky and charged into the group of sword chi spirits. When Chu Mu burst out, Boang also burst out. He used his bloodline secret technique to increase his strength and speed, and was only slightly slower than Chu Mu. He rushed towards the sword chi spirits. Without hesitation, without mercy, his hands danced, sweeping past 2 ordinary level 3 sword chi spirits. The earthquake was activated, and the high-frequency vibrations directly bombarded the 2 level 3 sword chi spirits, causing their bodies to tremble. With 2 bangs, they exploded and dissipated. The 2 swords formed a cross, and with an even more ferocious momentum, he charged towards a level 3 elite sword chi spirit like lightning. That level 3 elite sword chi spirit was about to react, but it was already hit by Chu Mu. It felt as if it was hit by a meteor. The level 3 elite sword chi spirit trembled, and from the middle it exploded, turning into a storm of chi that filled the sky, and dust filled the air. After insta-killing an elite 3rd rank sword aura spirit, Chu Mu's ferocious momentum was also blocked. It slowed down for a moment and didn't have the same indomitable ferocity. Everything was within his expectations. Chu Mu had already simulated it. Without hesitation, he switched to wind rule and merged it into his body. Immediately, he became as light as the wind. Like a gust of wind, he quickly flew to the side. The 2 swords retracted and then suddenly shot out, creating 2 dazzling sword light, tearing the sky and creating 2 perfect arcs. Under the earthquake, another 2 ordinary level 3 sword chi spirits were scattered by Chu Mu's swords. Chu Mu's body made a turn in the air, dodging a few slashes of sword chi, and flew back like a swallow. He swept past the 2 ordinary level 3 sword chi spirits and killed them once again. In an instant, the wind precepts switched to the void precepts. His body turned from light to ethereal, drifting erratically as if he had become one with the surrounding space. With a thought, he dodged the attack of the level 3 commander level sword chi spirit and appeared behind an ordinary level 3 sword chi spirit, waving both swords. Chu Mu's plan was to first get rid of the 20 normal 3rd rank sword aura spirits, then get rid of the 6 elite 3rd rank sword aura spirits. He could go through them and finally leave behind the commander 3rd rank sword aura spirit. Boang also rushed up. After using the secret bloodline technique, his strength had increased greatly, and his tyrannical attack power could allow him to kill an ordinary level 3 sword chi spirit in a short time. Chu Mu did not need Boang to be strong, and only needed to share a little of the pressure. Kill, kill, kill. Under the void rule, Chu Mu's body appeared everywhere as if he was teleporting. One after another, ordinary level 3 sword chi spirits died under his sword. It was incomparably fierce and incomparably carefree. This kind of unrestrained attack with all his strength was simply too satisfying. Vaguely, Chumu felt as if he had touched something, and as long as he used his strength, he would be able to pierce through it and see a whole new world. Finally, 18 ordinary level 3 sword chi spirits died under Chumu's sword. One died under Bawang's whip sword, and one was in a fierce battle with Bawang. Chumu did not hesitate, nor did he stop. His 2 swords spread out like an eagle's wings, causing his speed to increase, and disappeared in an instant, just in time to avoid the sword chi attack of the level 3 commander sword chi spirit. He appeared behind an elite level 3 sword chi spirit, and his 2 swords danced wildly, forming a sword chi storm. The fierce slash directly cut the elite level 3 sword chi spirit into pieces, killing it. There were still 4 elite level 3 sword chi spirits, and 1 commander level 3 sword chi spirit. The pressure on Chumu was still very big. The 4 elite level 3 sword chi spirits worked together under the command of the commander's sword chi spirit, increasing the difficulty. Chumu didn't dare to stop in the slightest, because he knew that the moment he stopped, the thunder-sweeping acupuncture point aura that he had condensed before would greatly decrease. Therefore, even if he had to risk being struck by the elite 3rd level sword chi spirit's chi sword, Chumu didn't dare to stop and counterattack. His treasured clothing was broken, and a long wound was torn open on his back. Blood instantly sprayed out. Fortunately, the protective sword aura, treasured clothing, and inner armor weakened the power of the chi sword. His powerful body greatly increased Chumu's defense. Otherwise, this sword would have been enough to split open Chumu's body. This sword was also within Chumu's calculations. The aspect of wood's origin surged with vigorous vitality, spreading to the wound on his back. The numbing itch immediately stopped the bleeding, and the wound also quickly healed. Chumu did not seem to feel the slightest bit of pain, and continued to attack without fear of death. 3 elite level 3 sword chi spirits. 2 elite level 3 sword chi spirits. Chumu was once again injured, but he still resisted and continued to attack. 1 elite level 3 sword chi spirit kill. In the end, there was only 1 commander level 3 sword chi spirit left, and Bawang was at the side. It was hard to imagine that Chumu, a 2-star sword of Gojosian, actually killed 18 ordinary level 3 sword chi spirits and 6 elite level 3 sword chi spirits by himself, directly facing a commander level 3 sword chi spirit. If this scene was seen by any other sword of Gojosian, they would either try to befriend Chumu or try to kill Chumu. It was too terrifying. Chumu knew that he was able to reach this step, other than the fact that before he attacked, he had gone through numerous simulations to calculate the various routes, the trajectory and timing of his attack, the opponent's reaction, and so on. How powerful was his deduction ability, and how powerful was his soul? That kind of burden was not something Chumu was willing to endure a second time. Other than that, there were also various things he could rely on. The top divine realm imperishable sword intent, the top divine realm rule force, the divine desolate sword technique, Deshang's burning blood transformation, and his incomparably exquisite and unfathomable sword skills. With 2 swords in hand and the vigorous vitality of the aspect of wood, as well as a powerful self-healing ability, all these aspects were indispensable. In this state, Chumu could kill any ordinary Samsung sword of Gojosian in a split second, and even an ordinary 4-star sword of Gojosian was not his opponent. He could even contend with a powerful 4-star sword of Gojosian. Even so, Chumu was injured 4 times, and each time the wounds were so deep that his bones could be seen. If not for the aspect of wood's powerful vitality and self-healing ability, the current Chumu would already be in a half-crippled state. Facing the tyrannical 3rd grade commander sword chi spirit, there was only one path left for him: death. Facing the powerful 3rd grade commander sword chi spirit, Chu Mu's body merged with the wind rule force, and his lithe figure fluttered like the wind, doing his best to dodge the third-grade commander's sword chi spirit's attacks. He needed some time to recover from his injuries. Only when his injuries were healed would he be able to compete with the third-grade commander's sword chi spirit. In a battle between experts, any weakness would lead to an even greater disadvantage. After a series of fierce battles, Chu Mu's sword chi was nearly depleted. Without hesitation, he activated the innate ability that he had not used for a long time, Spirit Devour. Immediately, a whistling sound rang out, and the heaven-earth yuan chi within a radius of several tens of thousands of meters surged over, transforming into a white river that rushed into Chu Mu's body, transforming into divine, desolate sword chi. In less than 10 breaths of time, Chu Mu's divine, desolate sword chi had completely recovered, and his spiritual sense had also recovered a little. After swallowing the blood yang pill, Deshang continued to use the burning blood transformation. A sword light flew out from his interspatial ring, and Deshang used the imperial sword technique to counterattack. The sword light contained the indestructible sword intent, divine desolate sword chi, and metal rule force. It was extremely sharp, and every sword brought about a threat to the third-grade commander's sword chi spirit. As for Chu Mu, while dodging, he was constantly recovering from his injuries. After another 10 breaths of time, the last of his injuries had healed, and it did not affect his battle. The two swords instantly slashed out, and in a breath of time, dozens of sword light intertwined and shot out, bombarding the third-grade commander's sword chi spirit's body. However, the majority of the sword light was blocked by its sword chi, and only a dozen or so sword light struck its body, causing some injuries. Its origin chi dissipated, but was quickly replenished. As if it was enraged by Chu Mu, the third-grade commander's sword chi spirits, sword chi swept out, and the terrifying sword chi formed an arc that broke through the air, flying past, and even the ground seemed to be scraped open. Chu Mu had no choice but to dodge the attack, and from top to bottom, the two swords joined together and fell like a meteor. The imperial sword techniques, sword light, circled around and slashed from the side. Facing Chu Mu's attack, the third-grade commander's sword chi spirit displayed its incomparably tyrannical strength. Its exquisite and peerless sword techniques seemed to be able to control the surrounding space, and every sword was like an earth-tier, second-grade, earth-breaking sword technique. Chu Mu did not dare to take a head-on, and could only dodge and counterattack. The power of his spiritual sense was once again consumed, and Chu Mu was delighted to see this. Once again, he observed and comprehended the exquisite and peerless sword techniques of the third-grade commander's sword chi spirit in the midst of battle. Boang looked around, and with a movement of his body, he immediately burst forth with full speed, flying towards the low-grade true yuan tree. He planned to first pluck all the true yuan fruits on the true yuan tree before anything else. Bawang's actions were detected by the third-grade commander's sword chi spirit. It immediately gave up on Chu Mu and slashed out a sword chi, wanting to kill Bawang, begging for praise, begging for praise, begging for praise. Chapter 10:28. The purple and red lightning and fire sword chi were mighty and ferocious, destroying everything in its path. Bawang's face paled, and he quickly changed directions to avoid the lightning and fire sword chi. Chu Mu brandished both swords, merging his immortal sword intent with the divine, desolate sword essence. His top high god realm wind and lightning laws were integrated into one of his swords, swift as the wind and violent as lightning. The defensive sword techniques, sword light, contain the metal law, spinning and slashing. In the blink of an eye, Chu Mu restrained the commander-level sword chi spirit, buying Bawang an opportunity. The whip sword lashed out. Shwa, 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 shwa. Sounds pierced through the air, turning into countless afterimages, slicing through the true essence fruits on the true essence trees. With another suction force, all the true essence fruits were sucked into his spatial ring. Chu Mu had given him a high-grade spatial ring. In the blink of an eye, more than 300 low-grade true essence fruits were all harvested by Boang. The commander-level sword chi spirit was thoroughly enraged. The purple and red lines on its body glowed brightly, exuding an even more terrifying aura. Its body also expanded by one size, looking taller and stronger. The purple and red lights twined around the sword chi, intertwining like two dragons dancing in the air. Every sword strike was powerful to the extreme, terrifying beyond compare. More importantly, this commander-level sword chi spirit's sword technique was extremely exquisite, forcing Chu Mu to focus all his attention on dealing with it. Every sword strike was like a thunderbolt tearing through the air, like an explosion of flames. Mixed together, the power was even more terrifying. Lightning and fire came from the same source. Lightning increased the power of fire, and fire increased the power of lightning, increasing the power of each other. Not only that, but it also amplified the power of lightning and fire laws to the extreme, displaying 100% of their power. The commander-level sword chi spirits, sword chi, seemed to have disappeared, turning into a purple lightning dragon and a red fire phoenix. The dragon soared and the phoenix danced, the dragon descended and the phoenix descended, the dragon and the phoenix appeared at the same time. A thought flashed through Chu Mu's mind, as if he had grasped something. With both swords in his hands, the defensive sword techniques, sword light, circled around him, turning into a defensive stance. His eyes stared unblinkingly at the commander-level sword chi spirit's sword technique, his divine sense covering every move, not missing any detail. The lightning dragon and fire phoenix roared. The phoenix's cries pierced through metal and cracked stone, incessant. Just the momentum alone was enough to shock anyone who looked at it. The great conqueror's face was solemn. His eyes flashed with a crazy fighting spirit. He clenched his fists tightly as a powerful force surged in his body. Traces of aura spread out, causing numerous cyclones to appear around his body, whistling and dispersing. The conqueror wanted to give his all to fight against such a powerful spirit of sword aura. However, he knew that he was no match for the spirit of sword aura. He would have to become a second-level beast king to be able to fight against the spirit of sword aura. Fight, fight, fight! The lightning dragon and fire phoenix danced in the air, attacking Chu Mu from all angles and bringing him immense pressure. Chu Mu was completely unaffected by the lightning dragon and fire phoenix. Zhang Xian's mind spun swiftly, and his soul energy continued to be depleted. His comprehension of swordsmanship continued to deepen, and he had already reached a critical point. The thunder dragon and fire phoenix attacked. Chu Mu did not dodge. Instead, he crossed his swords in front of him and assumed a defensive posture. The power in his muscles condensed and burst out in an instant, forcibly withstanding the bombardment of the thunder dragon and fire phoenix. In an instant, an indescribably powerful force erupted, charging over like an avalanche. More than half of it was offset by Chu Mu's eruption of earthquake energy, but the remaining half was still incomparably powerful, causing Chu Mu's two swords to tremble and almost fly out of his hands. The bones in his arms were almost broken, and his body seemed to have been directly rammed by an ancient mammoth flying backwards. His chest felt stuffy, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. With a boom, his body heavily smashed into a huge rock hundreds of meters away, and his whole body was directly embedded in the huge rock. "Master!" Boang was shocked and quickly rushed over. The commander-level sword chi spirit did not hold back. It raised its chi sword, and the thunder and fire precepts burst forth. It slashed down like it was splitting a mountain. The huge thunder and fire sword chi plowed through the hard ground, leaving a deep trench. It slashed towards the huge rock, wanting to split it in half. In the blink of an eye, the boulder trembled as a terrifying energy erupted from within. Amidst the rumbling sounds, a long roar shook the heavens and earth. The boulder exploded into pieces, but it didn't explode. It was as if an invisible hand had gathered the pieces and smashed them forward with great force, smashing them one by one towards the lightning and fire sword chi. Under the attack of the thunder fire sword chi, the gravel was directly shattered. A figure followed behind the huge rock, and two incomparably bright sword light intertwined in an instant, as if turning into a green wind dragon and a purple thunder dragon. They roared and collided head-on with the thunder fire sword chi, causing the thunder fire sword chi to shatter like glass. The remaining power did not dissipate. The green wind dragon and the purple thunder dragon lined the sky mightily, rushing towards the commander-level sword chi spirit, which was slashed out by Chu Mu's two swords. Swordsmanship was divided into horizontal and vertical. Horizontal was the domain of swordsmanship, from the 1st level to the 10th level, and vertical was the 3 realms of body, form, and spirit. Only by cultivating to the 10th level of swordsmanship horizontally and to the divine realm vertically could one be considered a true Deshang swordsman. In the past, Chu Mu's swordsmanship was horizontal. It was only when he cultivated to the peak of the 10th level that he realized the vertical aspect of swordsmanship. After that, he had been working hard to improve his swordsmanship. He had been stuck at the half step to the divine realm for quite a long time. This time, after entering the real essence secret realm, he did not know how many sword chi spirits he had killed and how many swordsmanship he had seen. He had constantly accumulated and improved, and had reached a critical point. Now, in the battle with the commander-level sword chi spirit, the commander-level sword chi spirit's swordsmanship was exquisite and unparalleled. Facing the blow of the commander-level sword chi spirit head-on and feeling its power and mystery, Chu Mu finally broke through the critical point, broke through the half-step to the divine realm, and truly stepped into the divine realm of swordsmanship. Even though it was only the beginning, Chu Mu's swordsmanship attainments had risen to a whole new level. Suddenly enlightened, all sorts of questions he had in the past were resolved, and all sorts of comprehensions and mysteries regarding swordsmanship surged forth. It turned out that swords could be used this way. It turned out that swordsmanship could be used this way. It turned out that the power of swordsmanship could reach such a powerful level. It turned out countless original understandings, gathered and condensed into a powerful sword, shattering the powerful sword chi of thunder and fire. The remaining power did not dissipate as it charged towards the commander-level sword chi spirit. Divine realm. It made Chu Mu's swordsmanship even more flexible, breaking through some kind of shackle, breaking through some kind of limit. All the moves were at his fingertips, like a heavenly steed soaring across the sky, like an antelope's antlers, without any moves, without any style, without any trace. At the same time that his swordsmanship broke through to the divine realm, his mastery of the various power of laws had also risen to a new level. The sword light was retracted, and the sword controlling technique was terminated. With 2 swords in hand, the gold and water laws condensed on the sacred sword in his left hand, while the wind and thunder laws condensed on the violent thunder sacred sword in his right hand. The divine wilderness sword essence, inextinguishable sword intent, 2 powers of laws. Such power was not inferior to the power of the commander-level sword chi spirit's swordsmanship, and even surpassed it. The situation was immediately reversed. Chu Mu's sword constantly struck the commander-level sword chi spirit's body, shattering it into pieces. Countless yuan chi dissipated, and although it quickly recovered, it still couldn't keep up with the speed of dissipation. On the other hand, Chu Mu, due to the breakthrough in his swordsmanship, had all kinds of enlightenment gushing out. He was in a state of excitement, and each strike was stronger than the last. Sharp, flexible, fast, violent, the laws of metal, the laws of water, the laws of wind, and the laws of lightning, Chu Mu became stronger the more he fought, and was in the stage of accumulating strength. On the other hand, the commander-level sword chi spirit became weaker as it fought. Its body was constantly damaged by the sword, and it began to fade as its strength decreased. Master's strength has become stronger. Boang was dumbfounded. He secretly gritted his teeth and made up his mind to desperately increase his strength so that he could keep up with his master's footsteps. The current Chu Mu seemed to be on steroids. It was a completely different scene from before when he was suppressed by the commander-level sword chi spirit. It made Boang feel like he was dreaming. The two swords danced wildly, and the sword shadows condensed into a sphere, enveloping the commander-level sword chi spirit. The sword light continued to strike, and the speed of the sword continued to increase, reaching an indescribable level. Even ghosts and gods would be horrified. Suddenly, Chu Mu, who was feeling incomparably carefree, felt his sword slash through empty air. His entire being was separated from the incomparably carefree and excited feeling, and he was disappointed and frustrated. Under his sword, the commander rank sword aura spirit had already disappeared without a trace. The ground was full of countless sword marks, crisscrossing and densely packed, like ravines, causing the ground to be fragmented. What a pity! Chu Mu couldn't help but sigh. If the commander-level sword chi spirit had held on for a while longer, perhaps his swordsmanship would have improved by a small level, from the early stage of the god realm to the middle stage of the god realm. Wasn't he too greedy? The trace of regret disappeared. Chu Mu also knew that being able to break through to the god realm in swordsmanship was already an extremely good harvest. There was no need to think too much about breaking through another small level. He would just cultivate slowly, and he would eventually reach it. He stopped the divine wilderness sword art, stopped Deshang's burning blood transformation, and hurriedly swallowed elixirs to recover his blood essence. He took the 4 spatial rings of the Samsung sword of Gojoseon that had been cut into pieces, called Boang, and quickly left. In his current state, he didn't have much strength left. As expected, not long after Chu Mu left, a group of sword of Gojoseon came here, looking at the bare true yuan tree, then looking at the shattered corpses and the countless sword marks on the ground, and sensing the remnant aura fluctuations in the air. They knew that there had been an extremely intense battle here not long ago. There were casualties on both sides, and it was likely that the sword of Gojoseon had won in the end. The true yuan fruits on the true yuan tree should have been taken away by the victorious sword of Gojoseon. After carefully sensing the remnant aura fluctuations, the group of sword of Gojoseon chased after Chu Mu and Boang. If Chu Mu saw this group of sword of Gojoseon, he would definitely be shocked. This was because this group of sword of Gojoseon was Yu Byakuya's group. They were also the disciples of Heartbreak House, one of the 5 major factions. Chapter 10:29. On the vast land, 2 figures stood tall. A terrifying aura gushed out from one of the vigorous figures. He soared into the sky and circled in the air at an even faster speed. Then he changed his direction and dived down like a meteorite. He punched out and heavily smashed the hard ground. With a bang, white ripples visible to the naked eye spread out in all directions from where the fist hit the ground. Layer after layer of ripples spread out endlessly. The ground shook, and in the midst of a violent sonic boom, the ground began to shatter with the fist as the center. It was as if the ice on the surface of a lake was jumping, and the ripples spread out in all directions. This punch alone caused the ground to collapse with a diameter of dozens of meters. One had to know that the ground in the true essence realm was very hard. "Master, my strength has increased by several times," Boang said excitedly as he retracted his fist. Seeing the destruction caused by Boang's punch, Chu Mu was also surprised. It was a very powerful punch. Even an ordinary Samsung, sword of Gojoseon, would not dare to take it. Previously, when Chu Mu was fighting with the level 3 commander sword Aura Spirit, Boang took the opportunity to pluck those low-grade vital essence fruits. There were as many as 380 of them. 380 low-rank true yuan fruits. To be honest, it was impossible for Chu Mu's cultivation to break through to the 3rd heavenly layer of creation. He had done his own calculations and estimated that he would need about 4,000 low-rank true yuan fruits to reach the peak of the second heavenly layer of creation and then break through to the third heavenly layer of creation. However, Bawang really needed to increase his strength. Therefore, Chu-Mu distributed the vital essence fruits to him. After eating 200 vital essence fruits, Bawang's strength successfully broke through the bottleneck and became a level 2 Beast King. His body was stronger, and his strength and speed had greatly increased. His attack power had also become more tyrannical. Bawang has become a level 2 Beast King. His strength has increased greatly. If we work together, we can easily kill a level 3 Commander Spirit of the Sword Aura. But a King-rank Spirit of the Sword Aura. Chu-Mu's eyes sparkled. To be honest, he really wanted to see the glory of a King-rank Spirit of the Sword Aura. If it was possible, fighting with a Spirit of the Sword Chi at the King level would definitely be of great help to his combat experience and understanding of swordsmanship. However, the increase in the level of the Spirit of Sword Aura was not only an increase in strength, but also in the attainment of swordsmanship. Chu-Mu's breakthrough in swordsmanship allowed him to defeat a level 3 commander-grade Spirit of Sword Aura, but he had no confidence in fighting against a King-grade Spirit of Sword Aura. However, that was a matter for the future. At the very least, he hadn't had the chance to encounter it yet, even before the true essence mystic realm closed. Whether or not he would encounter it was still unknown. At this moment, 7 figures shot out from the sky at an extremely fast speed. Among the 7 people, one of them, the Sword of Gojoseon, who was very sensitive to auras, said with certainty, "The remaining aura fluctuations should be left behind by the 2 people in front of us." In other words, those vital essence fruits were plucked by them. One of those 2 people looks familiar. I think he's the one I saw in the ancient palace. Chu-Mu, so it's you. Even the heavens have destined you to die under my sword. Yu Byakuya grinned when he saw Chu-Mu's face. He didn't bother to hide his voice at all. It penetrated the air and went straight into Chu-Mu's ears. Yu Byakuya. Chu-Mu frowned slightly. If it was just Yu Byakuya alone, he wouldn't be afraid. The problem was that there were 6 other Sword of Gojoseon with Yu Byakuya. Chu-Mu could tell that 4 of them were Samsung, Sword of Gojoseon, while the other 2 had strong auras. They should be intermediate, Sword of Gojoseon. Chu-Mu didn't have the confidence to fight against such a lineup. After all, the other party wasn't an ordinary Sword of Gojoseon, but a disciple of Broken Heart House. They were extremely talented and powerful. Yu Byakuya's speed suddenly increased as he rushed towards Chu-Mu. At the same time he said, "Fellow brothers, Chu-Mu's life will be taken by me." Hearing Yu Byakuya's words, the other 6 Sword of Gojoseon didn't object. They also sped up and spread out, especially the 2 intermediate Sword of Gojoseon. Their speed suddenly increased by several times. They directly flew above Chu-Mu and formed an encirclement to prevent Chu-Mu from escaping. Seeing this situation, Chu-Mu knew that it wouldn't be easy to escape today. He also understood that if he wanted to leave, he could definitely break out of the encirclement. However, the problem was Yu Byakuya. Chu-Mu also wanted to kill him. Now, the other 6 Sword of Gojoseon didn't make a move. Instead, they formed an encirclement to prevent him from escaping. The one who made a move was Yu Byakuya. This was an opportunity to kill Yu Byakuya. If he missed this opportunity, he didn't know when he would be able to kill Yu Byakuya in the future. With a cold glint in his eyes, Chu-Mu directly transmitted his voice to Bawang, telling him what to do later. Bawang nodded inwardly. He stood motionless on the spot. His fierce eyes were locked onto Yu Byakuya, ready to attack at any time. Chu-Mu die. With a roar, Yu Byakuya unsheathed his sword. The rules of gold and the rules of wind burst out and merged into his body. He performed a sword technique that cut through the void at an even faster speed towards Chu-Mu. The incomparably terrifying aura was astonishingly sharp. Before the sword arrived, Chumu could already feel the sharpness piercing through the void and stabbing into his body, causing his protective sword aura to almost shatter. His entire body was locked down and oppressed, unable to dodge. This was an extremely powerful sword technique. Junior brother Liu directly performed his proud sword technique. It seems like he intends to end his opponent in one strike. He's just a 2-star sword of Gojosian. If there weren't the restrictions of the true energy secret realm, senior brother Liu would have broken through to become a 4-star sword of Gojosian. His sword technique is so powerful that his opponent can't withstand it at all. Even if he's lucky enough to withstand the first strike, he won't be able to withstand the second strike. The other sword of Gojosian of Broken Heart Pavilion said one after another. The 2 intermediate sword of Gojosian smiled. In their opinion, with Byakuya's strength killing a 2-star sword of Gojosian, even if the latter had extraordinary talent, would be impossible for him to survive. They had never seen the battle between Chumu and the commander-level spirit of Sword Chi. Otherwise, they wouldn't have thought so. Byakuya wanted to kill Chumu with a tyrannical stance. Chumu also had the same idea. Byakuya launched a powerful sword technique. Chumu was waiting for the best opportunity, and so was Bawang. Chumu, you're the number 1 Fortune Gate disciple, but today you'll die under my sword. A ferocious voice, filled with killing intent, seemed to ring in his ears. Byakuya's Earth 2nd grade, earth-piercing sword technique had the characteristic of locking on to the target, making it impossible to dodge. If he couldn't dodge, then he wouldn't dodge. Chumu also didn't plan to dodge. His eyes narrowed and his pupils contracted. A cold light burst out from his eyes. Byakuya's sword was right in front of him, piercing towards his heart. It was incomparably sharp, as if it wanted to shatter his heart in one strike. In the blink of an eye, white lightning flashed from Chumu's waist. The violent thunder holy sword turned into a streak of lightning as it flew out of its sheath. Chumu's muscles bulged as he activated the earth-shaking energy, slashing towards Byakuya's sword. Byakuya was shocked to find that his Surekill sword was actually hit by Chumu's sword. Moreover, there was a terrifying shockwave that caused his sword to deviate uncontrollably. At the same time, Bawang's whip sword swung in a beautiful arc. The incomparably sharp sword tip pierced forward 3 times in an instant. Bawang's 3 consecutive strikes pierced towards Byakuya's head. Bawang's sudden attack was so fierce that it startled Byakuya. He quickly controlled his body to move to the side. At this time, a streak of green light appeared in front of Byakuya's eyes. It was like a gust of wind was blowing towards him. It was impossible to dodge, impossible to block. Byakuya only felt as if his neck was being stung. He felt a slight pain, and the world in his eyes seemed to be spinning. It was too fast. From the time Byakuya used his sword to get close to Chumu, to when Chumu knocked away Byakuya's sword, to when Bawang attacked, and Chumu used his 2 swords to slash Byakuya's neck. All of this happened in just a breath's time. Without hesitation, he directly put Bawang into the beast space and took off Byakuya's space ring. Chumu once again used Deshang's burning blood transformation and Deshang's imperial sword technique. With an explosive speed, he rushed towards the direction of a Samsung sword of Gojosian. This was Chumu's plan from the beginning. He wanted to kill Byakuya with a thunderous speed and choose a direction to break through. The direction he chose must be the Samsung sword of Gojosian, and not the 2 intermediate sword of Gojosian. As soon as Byakuya was killed, the 6th sword of Gojosian from Broken Heart House reacted one after another. They were incomparably furious and did not hesitate to attack. 6 terrifying sword skills pierced through the air, causing the world to shake. Chumu rushed towards one of the sword skills and dodged in an instant. He quickly approached the Samsung sword of Gojosian. With the cultivation of the second sky of Fate Realm, the speed of Deshang's Imperial Sword Technique, Deshang's Burning Blood Transformation, and the Earthquake Force had completely surpassed the full speed of an ordinary Samsung Sword of Gojosian. In an instant, Chu Mu flew past the Samsung Sword of Gojosian. At the same time, the sword in his left hand slashed out, breaking the opponent's protective sword aura and cutting off the opponent's neck. His head flew high into the air. Unfortunately, there was no time to take his spatial ring. Chu Mu! 2 Samsung Sword of Gojosian had died in a row, and one of them was his cousin. One of the 2 intermediate Sword of Gojosian roared angrily. His voice was filled with hatred, and even the surging river could not wash it away. An extremely terrifying aura was extremely violent, wreaking havoc around his body. He moved at full speed and chased after Chu Mu with the Sword of Gojosian from Broken Heart House. Chu Mu must die. Chu Mu must die. This was the biggest thought in the hearts of the 5 Sword of Gojosian from Broken Heart House. Their speed exploded, and they even used a secret technique to increase their speed. The 2 intermediate Sword of Gojosian immediately pulled away from the other 3 Samsung Sword of Gojosian and gradually closed in on Chu Mu. Suddenly, the Sword of Light that Chu Mu had transformed into trembled, and his speed doubled again. With an even faster speed, he slowly moved away from the 2 intermediate Sword of Gojosian until his back disappeared. Chapter 1030. The faint red sword light streaked across the sky like a stream of light, disappearing in an instant. In terms of speed, Chu Mu was still faster than the intermediate Sword of Gojosian after all. He successfully escaped from the pursuit of the 2 intermediate Sword of Gojosian. One could imagine how furious the 2 intermediate Sword of Gojosian and the other 3 Samsung Sword of Gojosian would be. Their hatred for Chu Mu could not be washed away by the torrential river. Chu Mu was also clear that if they met again, they would definitely attack him and kill him. Yu Byakuya's death could be considered as settling a grudge, but it also provoked an even greater grudge. The world of swordsmen was like this. Revenge breeds revenge, and there was no time. Unless one became very powerful, so powerful that no one dared to provoke you, all grudges would naturally disappear. Chu Mu had been working hard to reach the pinnacle of swordsmanship, to become so powerful that no one could surpass him. However, the current him was still very, very far away. He stopped the burning blood transformation and the defensive sword technique. Then he took out some medicinal pills and consumed them to recover. The blood yang pills that he had been consuming had not been replenished. The remaining medicinal pills could only support him to execute the great success burning blood transformation 4 or 5 more times. If he included the golden vein blood yang pills, he could execute it 2 more times. Landing on the ground, he took out Yu Byakuya's spatial ring and checked it. As expected of the Samsung Sword of Gojosian of the Broken Heart Pavilion, the collection in the spatial ring was very rich. There were more than 10 million upper-grade, profound crystals. Adding the other pills, Chu Mu found more than 200 true yuan fruits. Adding the remaining 180, Chu Mu had more than 400 low-grade, true yuan fruits. After recovering his strength, he walked on the ground of the true yuan secret realm. Whenever he encountered a sword chi spirit, he would draw his sword and fight. In the midst of life and death battles, he would constantly improve his swordsmanship. In the center of the Zhan Yuan realm, there was a huge palace that was nearly 1,000 meters tall. It stood on the ground as if it had existed since ancient times. In fact, this huge, ancient palace had already existed when the True Yuan realm first opened. This palace was called the True Essence Great Hall, and it was the center of the True Essence mystic realm. At this moment, the Zhan Yuan Great Hall stood tall on the ground. Lights of different colors enveloped the Zhan Yuan Great Hall. Those were seals, countless tyrannical seals that were almost impossible to break. Anyone who tried to enter the Zhan Yuan Great Hall would be blocked by the multicolored seals. If they tried to force their way in, they would be torn to pieces by the multicolored seals. In each of the 4 directions of the True Essence Hall, there was a 100-meter tall palace. They were all simple and unadorned. However, in terms of scale, they could not compare to the True Essence Hall. The 4 small and unadorned palaces were not covered by seals. However, in the open space outside the palace doors, a large group of sword chi spirits gathered. These 4 small palaces only had one tightly shut door that could be opened. The other directions were all sealed, and they were extremely hard. Even an attack from a high-level sword of Gojosian would not be able to break them, let alone a low-level sword of Gojosian. At this moment, thousands of meters away from the 4 small palaces, many sword of Gojosian had gathered. According to the statistics, there are a total of 3,000 sword chi spirits outside the East Palace. Wei Chong, the 7-star sword of Gojosian, said in a low voice. His cultivation had been suppressed to the 3rd heaven of creation realm, but his strength was not something that a Samsung sword of Gojosian could compare with. Even a real 4-star sword of Gojosian was no match for him. Therefore, among the group of sword of Gojosian outside the East Palace, he had the right to speak. In addition to Wei Chong, there were 2 7-star sword of Gojosian in the East Palace. One was called Luo Hua, and the other was called Ji Shunning. 3,000 sword chi spirits, all of them at level 3. If my eyes are not mistaken, the sword chi spirit at the back should be the legendary king level sword chi spirit. Luo Hua pointed his sword at the sword chi spirit 10,000 meters away and said in a low voice, 1 level 3 monarch tier sword chi spirit, 12 level 3 commander tier sword chi spirits, 360 level 3 elite tier sword chi spirits, and the rest are all normal level 3 sword chi spirits. Ji Shunning frowned. The commander level sword chi spirits already have basic intelligence, but the king level sword chi spirits are even more intelligent. They already know how to command lower level sword chi spirits to fight, not to mention the monarch rank spirit of sword chi. Just those over 2,000 ordinary rank 3 spirit of sword chi were enough to make the 3 7-star sword kings worry. They were powerful and were able to insta-kill any rank 3 spirit of sword chi, even to the extent that with a single sword skill, killing a few or a dozen spirit of sword chi was nothing difficult. But the problem was that their cultivation was limited. They could not use powerful sword techniques, and it was difficult for them to withstand the attacks of the sword chi spirits. In order to open the Zhenyuan Hall, we must first enter the 4 small halls in the east, west, south, and north halls and break the seal of the Zhenyuan Hall. And in order to enter the 4 small halls, we must pass through the group of sword chi spirits. Only by killing the king-level sword chi spirits can we open the doors of the small halls and enter. Ji Shunning continued, her gaze sweeping across everyone's faces. In other words, no matter what, we must kill all of these sword chi spirits. I believe that the sword of Gojosian outside the other 3 small halls also have the same idea. In fact, the high-tier sword of Gojosian entered the Zhenyuan secret realm with a purpose. Their purpose was to open the Zhenyuan Hall. From now on, I don't care where you come from or what your status is. All of you must listen to our orders. Attack together, kill those sword chi spirits, and open the East Hall. Luo Hua waved his long sword with an awe-inspiring aura. His eyes flashed with a cold light as he swept his gaze across everyone. Why should we? One of the Samsung sword of Gojosian suddenly sneered and retorted, your purpose is to enter the Zhenyuan Hall, but I have no such intention. Why should I listen to your orders? Very well, you have guts. Luo Hua stared coldly at the 3-star sword king, while Wei Chong and Ji Shunning both had cold smiles on their faces. You only have 2 choices. The first is to obey our orders and commands. The second is to die by my sword. How dare you, I am. The Samsung sword of Gojoseon was shocked and angry, just as he was about to announce his identity in an attempt to intimidate the other party. Luo Hua did not hesitate to slash out with his sword. In an instant, a ball of fiery red light bombarded out like a meteor. The air was scorched, and the earth was dried up. The Samsung sword of Gojoseon was locked in place, and his face changed greatly. He hurriedly waved his sword to block, but he was hit head-on and instantly flew out. He spat out blood, and his body was scorched black. He was almost killed. You dare to attack directly. I. On one hand, he was shocked. On the other hand, he was angry, and on the other hand, he was injured. The Samsung sword of Gojoseon was trembling all over. I said, in here, no matter who you are, what your background is, unless you have the strength to compete with any one of the three of us, you have to listen to our orders. Luo Hua contemptuously glanced at the 3-star Sword King. His eyes swept across the crowd. Remember, in here, no status is of any use. If you die, you die. If you are dissatisfied with me, then live on. After leaving the Zhanyuan mystic realm, you can use the power behind you to retaliate against me. But now, if you don't listen to my command, then there will be another soul under my sword. Such a threat, of course, no one dared to say anything. Of course, some people did not care. In this world, the strong were respected, and the weak had no right to speak. Not to mention, they also wanted to enter the Zhanyuan palace. Maybe there would be some gains. There were nearly 1,000 sword of Gojoseon gathered in the East Palace, including Chumu and Boang. Luo Hua and the other two's overbearingness, and everyone's reaction. Chumu did not intend to refute. He also did not have the strength to refute. Although he did not like Luo Hua's overbearingness, Chumu also knew that what Luo Hua said was very reasonable. Then, he had to work hard to improve his strength. Personal strength was the most important thing. The other families and sects were just external forces. At the critical moment, they could not be used. As the center of the True Origin secret realm, the True Origin Palace was of the utmost importance. Since he had come, Chumu naturally wanted to enter. Since he wanted to enter, with his own strength, he simply couldn't do it. Thus, he could only join hands with the other Sword Kings. Only by breaking through the 4 small palaces could he open the True Origin Palace. What was in the Zhanyuan Palace? Chumu did not know. Only when he entered the Zhanyuan secret realm would he know. Nearly 1,000 sword of Gojoseon against 3,000 sword chi spirits. Who would win and who would lose would depend on how the battle went. In fact, Luo Hua and the other 2 advanced sword of Gojoseon did not have any talent or experience in military formations. Their so-called command was just to gather the sword of Gojoseon together. When the battle started, they would release a powerful sword skill together and kill the sword chi spirits first. The more sword chi spirits died, the greater their advantage would be. Outside the other 3 small palaces, the sword of Gojoseon also gathered. The number of sword of Gojoseon outside the 4 small palaces was close to 1,000. Their opponents were the same. 1 level 3 monarch level sword chi spirit, 12 level 3 commander level sword chi spirits, 360 level 3 elite level sword chi spirits, and more than 2,000 level 3 normal level sword chi spirits. Such a powerful lineup was not to be underestimated. Now, everyone adjust your breathing. Let your strength reach its peak and prepare for battle. Luo Hua ordered. The Sword Kings didn't refute, nor did they intend to do the right thing. Since they were going to fight, then they should fight in their peak state and bring out their strongest strength. Otherwise, if they were to die under the sword Chi Spirit's Chi sword because of their own negligence and inadequacy, that would be tragic. As Chumu adjusted his breathing, he began to think. Fighting was a must. How to survive in a fight was the most important. Facing 3,000 sword aura spirits, He didn't think that every Sword King would be able to survive. As for who would survive and who would die in the fight, it would all depend on themselves. Chapter 1031. Sword Chi Storm. Nearly 1,000 Sword of Gojoseon, led by the 3 7-star Sword of Gojoseon, Wei Chang, Luo Hua, and Ji Shunning, all unleashed their powerful auras. The Sword of Gojoseon was unsheathed, and the power of sword intent and sword origin rules of order gathered on the sacred swords. Following Luo Hua's order, the Sword of Gojoseon all shot towards the group of Sword Chi spirits. The distance was too far, so they couldn't use their sword skills. Otherwise, their sword skills would be depleted before they could even hit the Sword Chi spirits. The Sword Chi spirits' Sword Chi were very powerful, but they couldn't cover a distance of nearly 10,000 meters. That way, their power would be depleted. The moment the Sword of Gojoseon appeared, the Sword Chi spirits sensed them. The king-level Sword Chi spirits at the back waved the Sword Chi in their hands and mobilized their troops. The Sword Chi spirits immediately moved and formed a crescent moon formation. The Sword Chi condensed. Under the command of the king-level Sword Chi spirits, the Sword Chi spirits raised their Sword Chi and slashed out. A terrifying sonic boom was heard. Streaks of powerful Sword Chi streaked across the sky, densely packed like a Sword Chi storm, covering a part of the sky. The earth-shattering roar was heard, causing the Sword of Gojoseon's faces to change and their scalps to tingle. "Scatter!" Luo Hua shouted. His voice was like a bell, covering the sonic boom of the Sword Chi as it traveled into the ears of every Sword of Gojoseon. Immediately, half of the Sword of Gojoseon moved to the left, while the other half moved to the right, avoiding the Sword Chi from the Sword of Gojoseon. They raised their swords and slashed forward. In an instant, a green-red storm swept out. It was an earth-tier sword skill of wind rule and fire rule. Wei Chang and Ji Shunning also attacked at the same time. Torrential waves roared endlessly as golden light filled the sky. Countless golden sword rays were densely packed like locusts. Slash, slash, slash. Every Sword of Gojoseon had finished accumulating power. They attacked with their swords, and one sword skill after another was unleashed. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, ice, thunder, cloud, and other types of Rule 4 sword skills were available. They were colorful and dazzling. Attacks from both sides slashed at the Sword Chi spirit. The speed of the sword technique was extremely fast. Even though the spirit of the monarch grade Sword Chi possessed extraordinary intelligence, it was still unable to react in time. Boom! 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 In an instant, over 1,000 sword techniques bombarded the Sword Chi spirit. The Sword Chi spirits did not just sit there and wait for their deaths. They raised their Chi swords to defend themselves. An earth-shattering explosion occurred. Flames invaded the area. Colorful lights flashed in all directions. The shockwave from the explosion of the Sword Chi formed a turbulent flow that spread out in all directions. The ground was shattered, scorched, and countless cracks appeared. In just one exchange, more than 400 Sword Chi spirits were killed. More than 200 Sword Chi spirits were left with broken bodies. They were constantly absorbing the surrounding Yuan Chi to replenish themselves. The ones that were killed were only ordinary level 3 Sword Chi spirits. The elite grade level 3 Sword Chi spirit and commander grade Sword Chi spirit were unharmed, let alone the monarch grade Sword Chi spirit. Once the first wave succeeded, the second wave of Sword Chi was unleashed once again, bombarding the Sword Chi spirits. The monarch grade Sword Chi spirit seemed to be enraged. It exuded a strong aura and slashed its Chi swords. A terrifying 3-colored sword Chi cut across the sky. It was hundreds of meters long and came crashing down. It destroyed a portion of the Sword Chi spirit, but there was still some energy left. It swept past a few Sword of Gojosian that could not dodge in time. The fact was that the monarch grade Sword Chi spirit was strong. Under this three-colored Sword Chi, a few Sword of Gojosian could not resist at all. They were cut in half at the waist. They struggled and wailed as they fell to the ground and died. The other Sword Chi spirits, under the command of the monarch grade Sword Chi spirit and the leadership of the 12 commander grade Sword Chi spirits, got into formation in an orderly manner. They attacked with their swords. The terrifying Sword Chi broke through the air and attacked from both sides. Immediately after, the 6 commander grade Sword Chi spirits led 180 elite grade Sword Chi spirits and close to 1,000 normal grade 3 Sword Chi spirits to attack from both sides. They attacked the Sword of Gojosian from both sides. What the Sword Chi spirits were best at was actually sword fighting. The power of their sword techniques was as terrifying as a sword skill. Once they got close to them, most of the Sword of Gojosian would be in a precarious situation. The Sword Chi spirits were very fast. Their bodies seemed to be weightless. They changed directions in the air and were very agile. The situation after that became a close combat situation. Luo Hua and the other 2 could not command them anymore. This was because they had to hold back the monarch grade Sword Chi spirit. Otherwise, the situation would not be good. The monarch grade Sword Chi spirit was indeed terrifying. It raised its Sword Chi and instantly appeared in front of a Samsung Sword of Gojosian. With a slash, the Samsung Sword of Gojosian did not even have time to react before its head was cut off. The head that flew high up in the air had a dazed look in its eyes, like a tiger in a flock of sheep. An ordinary Samsung Sword of Gojosian was not a match for the monarch grade Sword Chi spirit at all. This was because every time the monarch grade Sword Chi spirit attacked, the power of its sword was equivalent to an Earth grade 3 Earth breaker sword skill. Once the Sword Chi spirit's power was depleted, it would immediately recover. Swordsmen could not do this at all. In just a short span of 3 breaths, more than a dozen Samsung Sword of Gojosian were buried under the monarch grade Sword Chi spirits, Sword Chi. If they did not stop it, these Sword of Gojosian would be killed. This was because the Sword Chi spirit did not have the so-called energy consumption. As long as it was not defeated, it could fight without limit. The monarch grade Sword Chi spirit was really too fierce. The 3 of them did not have the confidence to fight it alone. They had to work together. When the 3 7-star Sword of Gojosian worked together, they directly blocked the monarch grade Sword Chi spirit and fought fiercely. The 12 commander level Sword Chi spirits were also very tyrannical and were not to be underestimated. Chu Mu blocked a commander level Sword Chi spirit. Originally, he planned to hide his strength, but the commander level Sword Chi spirit was very tyrannical. An ordinary Sword of Gojosian could not compete with it at all. An ordinary Samsung Sword of Gojosian would be killed in a single exchange. Although there were some intermediate Sword of Gojosian whose cultivation had been suppressed, they were also held back by the elite level Sword Chi spirit. A commander level Sword Chi spirit was unstoppable. Chumu had no choice but to attack. He exploded with a portion of his strength to hold back this commander level Sword Chi spirit. Based on the current situation, it was not a good thing to have too many Sword of Gojosian die. Chumu had also only exploded with a portion of his strength. He was only holding back the commander level Sword Chi spirit. Moreover, he looked like he was barely holding back. Even so, the Sword of Gojosian beside him were very shocked. A mere 2-star Sword of Gojosian was actually much stronger than the Samsung Sword of Gojosian. Looking at the many Samsung Sword of Gojosian, they were at a disadvantage or even killed after exchanging a few blows with the commander level Sword Chi spirit. However, Chumu was able to hold back a level 3 commander level Sword Chi spirit, although it looked like he was barely holding back. Luo Hua and the other 2, who were holding back the monarch-level sword chi spirit, also caught a glimpse of Chu Mu holding back the commander-level sword chi spirit from the corner of their eyes. They were very surprised. They immediately paid attention to Chu Mu, this 2-star sword of Gojosian, holding back the commander-level sword chi spirit and dodging it time and time again. He once again experienced the commander-level sword chi spirit's sword skills. Every commander-level sword chi spirit's sword skills were about the same, but their styles were different. They had their own merits. Moreover, their mastery of the power of the rules was very profound. It was also something worth learning. Even if the 3 of them worked together, it would be very difficult to kill a level 3 monarch-level sword chi spirit. This was because once a monarch-level sword chi spirit was injured, it would recover immediately. However, once a swordsman was injured, it would be very difficult for him to recover. It was impossible to kill this monarch-level sword chi spirit with just the 3 of them in a short period of time. The only thing they could do was to hold it back and let the other sword of Gojosian unleash their full strength to kill these sword chi spirits. Although the sword chi spirits had the upper hand in terms of numbers, they were much weaker in terms of intelligence. Without the command of the monarch-level sword chi spirit, the normal-level 3 sword chi spirits could only rely on their instincts to fight. The sword of Gojosian teamed up in 2s and 3s to form a sword formation to fight against the sword chi spirits. Their lethality increased greatly. In addition, the stronger sword chi spirits were held back by the experts. Under this situation, the sword chi spirits kept dying, turning into energy and dissipating into the air. No one noticed that the dissipating energy seemed to be inexplicably attracted and floated towards the direction of the palace of true essence. The normal level 3 sword chi spirits kept decreasing, while the sword of Gojosian also suffered casualties, but it was not that obvious. Suddenly, the monarch-level sword of Gojosian slashed out 3 times in an instant, breaking through the encirclement of 3 7-star sword of Gojosian. Its body seemed to have been flattened into a sheet of paper as it rushed out from the gaps. As it raised its sword, a huge sword chi broke through the air and slashed out. At the same time, like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, it rushed towards the group of Samsung sword of Gojosian who had formed a sword formation. With one charge, more than 10 Samsung sword of Gojosian and a 4-star sword of Gojosian, whose cultivation was suppressed, died under the monarch-level sword chi spirit's sword chi without any resistance. It was unbelievably brutal. Luo Hua and the other 2 were shocked and angry. The monarch-level sword chi spirit had actually forced them to retreat and escaped from the encirclement of the 3 of them. It even killed more than 10 sword of Gojosian. This was simply a slap to their faces. Secret technique. Luo Hua's angry voice was like a cold wind blowing through the gaps. He immediately used his secret technique, regardless of the side effects. Wei Chang and Ji Shunning were also very angry. They also used their secret techniques. With a rumbling sound, their strength increased by more than a fold. With a flash of their bodies, they once again formed an encirclement surrounding the monarch-level sword chi spirit. Under the use of their secret techniques, the power of their swords increased greatly, their speed increased, and the encirclement became even tighter, eliminating any possibility of the monarch-level sword chi spirit escaping. Chu Mu held back the commander-level sword chi spirit while observing the monarch-level sword chi spirit's swordsmanship. Just now, the monarch-level sword chi spirit suddenly rushed out of the encirclement of the 3 sword of Gojosian and instantly killed more than 10 Samsung sword of Gojosian and a 4-star sword of Gojosian. This made Chu Mu very shocked. That strength was really tyrannical and unparalleled. The monarch-level sword chi spirit swordsmanship was more than twice as exquisite as the commander-level sword chi spirit's swordsmanship. Chu Mu couldn't wait to use his full strength to kill the commander-level sword chi spirit in front of him as soon as possible. and then fight with the monarch-level sword chi spirit. However, his rationality told him that he couldn't do that. Outside the other 3 small halls, the battle was equally intense. The monarch-level sword chi spirit was being fought by the 7-star sword of Gojosian, who had their cultivation suppressed. Chapter 1032. I'm here to help you. A voice came from afar, and from the corner of his eyes, a figure flashed. Sword light pierced through the air, piercing towards the commander-level spirit of sword chi. It was an intermediate sword of Gojosian whose cultivation had been suppressed. He had already gotten rid of a commander-level spirit of sword chi and hurried over to help Chumu. Exhaling, Chumu looked relieved. With someone to share his burden, he felt much more relaxed. He could pay more attention to the battle between the monarch-level spirit of sword chi and the 3 advanced sword of Gojosian. How should I address you? The intermediate sword of Gojosian asked Chumu as he attacked with his sword. He saw that Chumu was only at the 2nd heavenly layer of destiny, but his battle prowess was so strong that he was definitely on the same level as a peerless genius. He wanted to befriend him. Chumu! While dealing with the commander-level spirit of sword chi, Chumu had to watch the battle between the monarch-level spirit of sword chi, and was still paying attention to his surroundings. A hint of surprise flashed in the eyes of the intermediate sword of Gojosian. I heard that the number 1 fortune disciple is called Chumu. Could it be you? If there is no one else, it should be me. Chumu's eyes were still glancing at the monarch-level spirit of sword chi as he replied unhurriedly. Hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. Brother Chu is only a 2-star sword of Gojosian, but you can fight a level 3 commander spirit of sword chi without being at a disadvantage. No wonder you are the number 1 fortune disciple. The intermediate sword of Gojosian avoided the attack of the commander-level spirit of sword chi and replied to Chumu. He then immediately said, Brother Chu, let us use our full strength and kill this spirit of sword chi in the shortest time possible. What do you think? All right. Chumu nodded his head and pretended to explode. His aura swept forth, and the speed of his sword attacks slightly increased. His strength was also slightly more tyrannical. His strength had increased by about 30%. In the eyes of a middle-stage sword king, this was very normal. He also exploded out with power, and his sword's attack power became even more tyrannical. The 2 of them cooperated quite well, blocking, dodging, and counterattacking. Sword after sword struck the commander grade sword chi spirit's body until it finally shattered. This time, Chumu noticed that after the sword chi spirit was defeated, the origin chi quickly flowed in one direction. It was the direction of the true essence hull. However, Chumu didn't think too much about it because the battle was still going on. Following the death of the commander grade sword of Gojosian, more and more powerful sword of Gojosian were freed up to assist the other sword of Gojosian in killing their opponents. The number of sword of Gojosian's spirit of sword of Gojosian dwindled. In the end, only a monarch-grade sword of Gojosian was left. It was still engaged in a fierce battle with 3 high-grade sword of Gojosian. Looking at the situation, it seemed that it would be difficult to determine the victor in a short period of time. Chumu couldn't help but sigh again. A monarch-grade sword of Gojosian was indeed extremely tyrannical. Seeing that the other sword of Gojosian had killed their opponents, and only the 3 most powerful sword of Gojosian were still unable to take down this monarch-grade sword of Gojosian, Luo Hua and the other 2 couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Chumu, on the other hand, wasn't anxious at all. He couldn't wait for the battle to continue, so that he could observe and comprehend more, until he couldn't comprehend anymore. Facing 3 high-grade sword of Gojosian, whose cultivation was suppressed and who had used a secret technique, the monarch-grade sword of Gojosian displayed astonishing tenacity. It fought to the death without retreating, and was not afraid of death. The urgency to enter the true essence hall made Luo Hua and the other 2 a little impatient. Listen, we'll retreat together later. All of you attack together and use your most powerful sword skills to kill this sword of Gojosian." Wei Chang gritted his teeth and said, although he felt very embarrassed, he also knew that if they continued to fight based on the current situation, even if they had the upper hand, they would still have to fight fiercely for a period of time. Maybe a quarter of an hour, maybe an hour, before they could defeat this monarch-grade sword of Gojosian. When Luo Hua and Ji Shunning heard this, they didn't have the slightest intention of objecting. When the surrounding sword of Gojosian heard this, they hurriedly gathered their strength, and a tyrannical power condensed on their sharp swords. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, Luo Hua, Wei Chang, and Ji Shunning suddenly burst forth and slashed out with their extremely tyrannical swords. It was a close combat sword skill, and the 3 sword skills directly hit the body of the monarch-grade sword of Gojosian, causing the sword of Gojosian to tremble all over. Its energy dissipated, and its body instantly stiffened because of the powerful force. Using this opportunity, the 3 of them burst forth with their fastest speed and retreated. The sword of Gojosian all attacked with their swords and colorful sword skills of different shapes and colors from all directions, blasted towards the monarch-grade sword of Gojosian, and directly drowned the sword of Gojosian. So many sword skills, and all of them were extremely powerful, at least at the level of Earth Tier, 2nd rank earth-breaking sword skills. Chu Mu imagined that no matter how powerful the monarch-grade sword of Gojosian was, it wouldn't be able to withstand it. As expected, when the aftershock of the sword skills dissipated, the monarch-grade sword of Gojosian had already disappeared without a trace, and the ground where the sword of Gojosian was in ruins, full of potholes and countless cracks like a ruin. Almost 1,000 sword of Gojosian, and after the battle with the sword of Gojosian, there were only about 600 left, and it could be considered a heavy loss. However, the 600 sword of Gojosian all unleashed their powerful sword skills, bombarding the body of the monarch-grade sword of Gojosian. The power was truly terrifying beyond compare. Once the monarch-grade sword of Gojosian died, the layer of seal on the door of the East Palace suddenly faded and then disappeared. "Everyone, let's recover first," Luo Hua said, and took out some elixirs and threw them into his mouth. In this battle, not only did more than 300 sword of Gojosian die, the surviving sword of Gojosian strength had also been greatly depleted and urgently needed to recover. Not long after, the sword of Gojosian strength had completely recovered, and they all stood up and walked towards the door of the East Palace and rushed through the door in a single file. The East Palace was empty, and there was only a colorful ball floating in midair, emitting waves of sealing power. That's one of the sealing sources of the true Vitality Hall. Only by breaking it can we open the true Vitality Hall. Luo Hua pointed at the colorful ball and said, "There is no danger in breaking the sealing source," and every sword of Gojosian attacked. Waves of attacks bombarded the sealing source, causing the sealing source to tremble. The sealing source was extremely sturdy, and no matter how the sword of Gojosian attacked, it did not look like it was broken, and everyone had to increase the power of their attacks. 600 sword of Gojosian attacked continuously for half an hour, and then there was a cracking sound, and a crack appeared on the sealing source. Seeing that there was hope, everyone was overjoyed and continued to attack. With every attack, the crack on the sealing source seemed to expand. After a dozen breaths, the entire sealing source shattered, and the East Palace trembled, as if something had happened. "Let's go to the true Vitality Hall," Luo Hua said, and rushed out of the East Palace and rushed towards the true Vitality Hall. At the same time, the sealing sources of the 3 smaller halls in the East, West, and North Palace were also broken. When everyone rushed out of the East Palace, they saw that outside the 1,000-meter-tall true Vitality Hall, the colorful seals were fluctuating, like the surface of a lake being blown by the wind, and ripples spread out. Then, countless seals began to fade, and many sword of Gojosian gathered outside the true Vitality Hall. Their eyes were burning, and they stared at the closed door of the true Vitality Hall, waiting for the seals to disappear. Every breath felt like a day, and the speed at which the seals were disappearing made everyone anxious. A quarter of an hour felt like a few years. Just as the many Sword of Gojosian were about to go crazy, the seals finally disappeared. Without saying a word, more than a dozen high-grade Sword of Gojosian shot out without hesitation, and in an instant they broke through the heavy door of the true Vitality Hall and rushed inside. How could the other Sword of Gojosian be willing to fall behind? One by one, they burst out with their fastest speed, and like a meteor shower, they shot towards the true Vitality Hall's door. Chu Mu was also in the crowd, and Boang followed, closely behind Chu Mu, rushing towards the true Vitality Hall's door. As soon as they passed through the door, Chu Mu's body trembled, and it was hard to describe the feeling in that instant. Just like Chu Mu, the other Sword of Gojosian also trembled, and they couldn't help but let out a sound of pleasure. What dense and pure Yuan Qi! A Sword of Gojosian couldn't help but exclaim, "This is the first time I've experienced the densest and purest Yuan Qi of Gojosian. It's almost liquefied." Another Sword of Gojosian exclaimed, "This place was very spacious and should be the front hall of the true Vitality Hall. Apart from the walls, there was nothing else. But there were countless white ribbons floating in the air, and although they couldn't be touched, they could still feel the shockingly pure energy contained within." The Sword of Gojosian were all very familiar with this energy because they came into contact with it every day or even all the time. It was just that it wasn't as dense as this. Yuan Qi, the density and purity of the Yuan Qi of Gojosian were both incomparably shocking. The Sword of Gojosian was right. The Yuan Qi here was indeed so dense and pure that it was almost liquefied. What was liquefied? It could only be extracted from supreme-grade origin crystals. 10,000 supreme-grade origin crystals could only extract 1 kilogram of liquefied Yuan Qi. Looking at the liquefied Yuan Qi floating in the front hall, which covered an area of tens of thousands of meters and was hundreds of meters high, how many kilograms would it be if it was liquefied? 10,000 kilograms? 100,000 kilograms? Or more? It was unimaginable. "I'm going to cultivate here." A Sword of Gojosian seemed to be so excited that he forgot that in the true vitality realm, his cultivation could not exceed the third heavenly layer of creation realm. He sat down cross-legged, operated his cultivation method, and began to cultivate. The liquefied Yuan Qi was drawn into his body, and in less than 15 minutes, the Sword of Gojosian's face changed, revealing a pained expression. His body shook like a sieve, and he forcibly stopped cultivating. With a muffled groan, he spat out a mouthful of blood. "It's too dense. My meridians can't bear it, and I almost exploded," the Sword of Gojosian said after wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. His words made the others not know whether to laugh or cry, but also made their hearts tremble. A glint flashed in Chumu's eyes because he thought of a very important problem. He couldn't wait to give it a try. If he succeeded, it meant that in the true Origin Palace his sword energy would be inexhaustible. Chapter 1033. An endless stream of white gas floated in the front hall of the True Essence Hall. It filled the entire front hall that was tens of thousands of meters wide and hundreds of meters tall. The nearly liquefied heaven-earth Yuan Qi made the Sword of Gojosian feel both excited and fearful. Any cultivator would yearn for pure and rich heaven-earth Yuan Qi, but when they truly experienced it, they realized that the overly pure and rich heaven-earth Yuan Qi actually made them apprehensive. Speaking of which, the Yuan liquid was much purer and richer than the heaven-earth Yuan Qi here. But the problem was that when the Sword of Gojosian cultivated, they would not recklessly consume the Yuan liquid. Instead, they would consume an appropriate amount and immediately refine it, depending on their body's tolerance. But this place was different. There was an abundance of pure and rich heaven-earth Yuan Qi everywhere. They did not need to actively absorb it as it wrapped around their bodies and drilled into their bodies. If they actively absorbed it, it would be like a storm. Their meridians would not be able to withstand it, and their bodies would not be able to withstand it, ultimately causing their bodies to explode and die. For a sword of Gojosian to be worried that his body would explode from the overly pure and rich heaven-earth Yuan Qi, it had to be said that this was a great irony. All sword of Gojosian are prohibited from using sword techniques. After a discussion among the 10 high-ranking sword of Gojosian, they jointly issued this order. Anyone who violated this order would be executed by the combined efforts of the 10 high-ranking sword of Gojosian. There was no other way. The heaven-earth Yuan Qi here was too pure and rich, and once a sword technique was used, it would often affect the surrounding environment. It could be imagined that if a sword technique was used in this place, it was very likely that a Yuan Qi storm would appear. A Yuan Qi storm was a terrifying thing. In the front hall's environment, a Yuan Qi storm would definitely sweep away all the Yuan Qi in the hall. The storm that was formed was absolutely terrifying. Once it appeared, not many of the sword of Gojosian present would be able to survive. It was even possible that all of them would die. While the other sword of Gojosian were both excited and worried, Chu Mu did not have such worries. Without any hesitation, he used the divine wilderness sword art. 10 breaths of time was actually very short. It would pass in the blink of an eye. The Empyrean sword origin constantly compressed and condensed, becoming more and more condensed and fine. In the end, it turned into a golden energy. Apart from Chu Mu himself, no one else knew that the sword origin in his body had undergone a huge change in just 10 seconds. The divine desolate sword technique could be considered a secret technique that could increase one's strength. Furthermore, it could increase one's strength by 10 times. This was a level that other secret techniques could not achieve. Other secret techniques that could increase one's strength by 3 times were already very terrifying. Secret techniques that could increase one's strength by 4 or 5 times were extremely rare. All secret techniques had side effects. Most secret techniques had similar side effects, which were a burden on the body or a loss of blood essence. Once the duration of the secret technique was over, the user would feel weak, uncomfortable, and so on. However, the divine desolate sword technique was different. The only side effect was the consumption of sword origin. The divine desolate sword technique constantly compressed and condensed the sword origin. In the end, the quality of the sword origin would be increased by 10 times, causing the quantity of sword origin to greatly decrease. Furthermore, once the divine desolate sword technique was used, regardless of whether one attacked or not, the sword origin would be constantly consumed. If not for Chu Mu's precise and unique control of the sword origin, he would have tried his best to use the least amount of energy in exchange for the greatest power. Even so, the divine desolate sword origin could not withstand the consumption for a long period of time. At most, it could last for an hour. But now he did not have such concerns, because the environment here, the heaven-earth Yuan Qi here, was too pure and too rich. In just 10 breaths of time, Chu Mu's strength had silently increased by at least 10 times. Now, in terms of the power of his sword origin, he was not inferior to the Samsung sword of Gojosian. Once he attacked, his attack power would be even more tyrannical. He could completely wipe out any Samsung sword of Gojosian present. Of course, the intermediate sword of Gojosian and the advanced sword of Gojosian that had their cultivation suppressed were different. Although their sword origin was suppressed to the level of the 3rd heaven of creation realm, the quality of their sword origin was not significantly suppressed. It was still more than 10 times purer than the real Samsung sword of Gojosian. Naturally, their strength was also stronger. No matter what, Chu Mu, who had used the divine desolate sword technique, already possessed powerful strength. Coupled with his exquisite sword techniques and outstanding battle talent, he even had the confidence to contend with the advanced sword of Gojosian here. Of course, whether he could really contend with them Mu did not dare to be certain. Powerful energy flowed within his body. Wisps of heaven-earth yuan qi constantly entered his body through his pores, restoring the divine, desolate sword origin that was slowly being consumed. This allowed the divine, desolate sword origin to be maintained at its peak state. Mu was in high spirits, but he kept a low profile. Standing in the crowd, he was not eye-catching at all. Even so, Mu could still feel a few fierce gazes piercing through the sky, piercing through the dense heaven-earth yuan qi, and landing on his body. He turned his head and saw two Sword of Gojosian staring at him with fierce and murderous gazes. Those two eyes were filled with resentment and anger, as if a tsunami was about to swallow him up. They were the two intermediate Sword of Gojosian from Broken Heart Pavilion. Mu did not see the other three Samsung Sword of Gojosian. Perhaps they had died in the battle with the spirit of the sword chi. Even an intermediate Sword of Gojosian had died, so it was not strange for a Samsung Sword of Gojosian to die. Mu, you deserve to die. A voice filled with hatred that could not be washed away by the torrential river was like a cold wind blowing through the gaps in the hall. The two intermediate Sword of Gojosian from Broken Heart Pavilion were filled with hatred. Their bodies exuded an incomparably fierce, murderous aura. Using strange footwork, they shuttled through the crowd, moving forward from left and right like poisonous snakes, rapidly approaching Mu. The sudden change alarmed the other Sword of Gojosian in the front hall. Their attention was immediately attracted to the two intermediate Sword of Gojosian from Broken Heart Pavilion. They could feel the incomparably fierce, murderous aura from their bodies. They had locked onto someone and were charging towards that person at lightning speed. In the next moment, two incomparably resplendent sword light were unsheathed. It was so cold and fierce that it was difficult to look at it directly. The Sword of Gojosian were shocked to discover that the target of the two intermediate Sword of Gojosian, whose cultivation had been suppressed, was actually a 2-star Sword of Gojosian. If they were not mistaken, that was indeed a 2-star Sword of Gojosian whose cultivation was only at the second heavenly layer Fate Realm. In this front hall filled with Samsung Sword of Gojosian, a 2-star Sword of Gojosian who had suddenly attracted everyone's attention was very conspicuous. Immediately, some people took pleasure in the misfortune of others. They believed that this 2-star Sword of Gojosian would die without a doubt. Indeed, in their understanding, it was already very surprising that a 2-star Sword of Gojosian, who was extremely talented and powerful, could defeat an ordinary Samsung Sword of Gojosian. Moreover, the intermediate Sword of Gojosian, whose cultivation had been suppressed, was still far stronger than an ordinary Samsung Sword of Gojosian, not to mention that the two of them were working together. As soon as the two intermediate Sword of Gojosian from Broken Heart Tower rushed over, Mu transmitted his voice to Bawang, asking him how to cooperate. Bawang secretly nodded. His eyes shone with a fierce and domineering light as he stared at the intermediate Sword of Gojosian, who was rushing over from the left and had already drawn his sword. With his strength, he was naturally not a match for an intermediate Sword of Gojosian. Even if it was just an intermediate Sword of Gojosian whose cultivation had been suppressed to the third heavenly layer Fate Realm, he could still stall for time. What Mu needed was that little bit of time. The two intermediate Sword of Gojosian from Broken Heart Tower did not dare to use their sword skills. They did not want to die, so they had to get close to Mu and use their sword skills to kill Mu swiftly and fiercely to vent the hatred in their hearts. This was exactly what Mu wanted. He loosened and clenched the 5 fingers of his right hand several times, causing his palm and fingers to relax. Finally, he bent them slightly in a natural posture, which was the most suitable for an instant explosion. The light in Mu's eyes was restrained, reflecting the two intermediate Sword of Gojosian who were rapidly approaching from the left and right. He silently calculated the best time to attack and how to directly kill the two intermediate Sword of Gojosian in the shortest time possible. But on second thought, In this place where there were so many people, he did not know what would happen next. He should hide his strength and not expose too much of his strength. However, he could not let others think that he was a pushover either. He calculated again and grasped the right angle. That was why he transmitted his voice to Bawang to attack. The sword of Gojosian around Chu Mu had already retreated, leaving an empty space. They did not want to be involved. Even Bawang had walked to the side under Chu Mu's transmission. Among the dozen or so advanced sword of Gojosian, 3 of them had been staring at Chu Mu. They wanted to see how this young sword of Gojosian, who could resist the attack of a level 3 commander sword of Gojosian, would deal with the attacks of 2 intermediate sword of Gojosian. If necessary, they would take action and save Chu Mu's life. After all, this young sword of Gojosian was very talented. In an instant, different thoughts flashed through the minds of every sword of Gojosian. 2 incomparably sharp sword light, condensed with astonishing killing intent streaked across the sky, 1 slashing and 1 piercing, wanting to kill Chu Mu. In an instant, Bawang made his move. With a flick of his whip sword, he pierced forward. The sharp sound of air breaking made the scalps of the surrounding sword of Gojosian tingle. Bawang's sudden attack was out of the expectations of an intermediate sword of Gojosian from Heartbroken Pavilion. Fortunately, he had considered this possibility and hurriedly retreated. The price was that he could not continue to cooperate with another person to kill Chu Mu. However, even if a mere 2-star sword of Gojosian was extremely talented and powerful, he was definitely not a match for a 6th-order sword of Gojosian whose cultivation had been suppressed. That's right, the sword of Gojosian, who was thrusting his sword at Chu Mu, was actually a 6th-order sword of Gojosian. Just as Chu Mu's throat was about to be pierced by that sharp sword light, Chu Mu moved. His figure swayed, and his left foot took a step forward, seemingly in a sorry state as he narrowly avoided the sharp sword light. As if he had expected Chu Mu's dodge, the sword that was thrusting out paused and directly slashed to the right, as if wanting to cut through Chu Mu's neck. His footwork changed, his figure changed, and he dodged again and again. The sword light also changed accordingly, each move aimed at a vital point. When the other sword of Gojosian saw that Chu Mu was not only not killed by the sword, but also dodged, they were all at a loss for words. Chapter 1034. In the pure and rich front hall, more than 2,000 sword of Gojosian formed an encirclement. In the middle, there was a cold and sharp sword light flashing, crushing the white Yuan chi flow. Bawang was holding back one of the intermediate sword of Gojosian, but he was in a precarious situation. His body had already been slashed by the other party's sharp sword several times, and there were wounds all over his body. Fortunately, his physique was many times stronger than a human 2-star sword of Gojosian, and even stronger than Chu Mu. His self-healing ability was also quite strong, and in addition to his innate speed, reflexes, and combat talent, he was able to withstand a few attacks without being killed. Even so, Bawang's body was still dripping with blood. The sharp sword chi had invaded his body, making him feel very uncomfortable. However, Bawang's face was fierce, as if the wounds on his body were fake. Bawang only had one thought, and that was to hold back this intermediate sort of Gojosian so that he could not attack Chu Mu. Even if he died, he had to hold back this intermediate sort of Gojosian. Who is this? A mere 2-star sword of Gojosian can actually resist the attack of an intermediate sword of Gojosian. The sword of Gojosian were surprised by Bawang's strength and tenacity, but they were even more surprised by Chu Mu. This was because Bawang had suffered many injuries under the other party's sword. It seemed that he could not withstand a few more attacks. On the other hand, although Chu Mu was dodging in a somewhat embarrassing manner, he did not seem to have been hit by the other party's sword. No matter how one looked at it, he was better than Bawang. While dodging, Chu Mu moved towards Bawang. He had also seen Bawang's predicament. Everything was under his careful calculation. After getting close to Bawang, Chu Mu suddenly accelerated and moved to the side, just in time to avoid the sword light. The sharp sword of Gojosian stabbed towards the side of another intermediate sword of Gojosian. The sword of Gojosian had all reached the stage of one with the sword. The sword moved at will and stopped at will. Therefore, this intermediate sword of Gojosian immediately stopped his sword and turned to slash at Chu-Mu, who was dodging to the side. The change was so fast that an ordinary Samsung sword of Gojosian would find it difficult to dodge. It was also at this moment that Chu-Mu attacked. The Frenzy Thunder sacred sword turned into a blazing white thunderbolt. It tore through the air and pierced towards the back of the intermediate Sword King who was madly attacking the Overlord, where the heart was. Damn it. The sudden change made the two intermediate sword of Gojosian's face change. The intermediate sword of Gojosian, who was attacking Bawang, had no time to dodge. The intermediate sword of Gojosian, who was about to kill Chu-Mu, quickly changed his sword technique and stabbed towards Chu-Mu's sword again. He had to save his junior brother first. This was exactly what Chu-Mu wanted. The stab was just a feint. It disappeared under the opponent's sword and burst out with an unparalleled speed, like a lightning bolt that tore the sky. The eyelids of the sword of Gojosian around suddenly twitched. Their hearts trembled, and a chill emerged for no reason. Their eyes only caught the trajectory of an instant. A blazing white light flashed past in an instant, carrying Chu-Mu and the intermediate sword of Gojosian. The sword of Gojosian rushed 1.5 meters away and stopped. Turning around, the sword once again turned into a blazing white lightning bolt that tore the void. Under the earth-shaking force, the rules of gold, and an exquisite sword technique, the sword tore apart the intermediate sword of Gojosian's protective sword aura, tore apart his treasured clothes, and also tore apart his inner armor. With only a slight obstruction, the tip of the sword slashed across the back of the intermediate sword of Gojosian. There seemed to be a teeth-numbing and bone-numbing sound. Chu-Mu's sword cut off the spine of the intermediate sword of Gojosian. The terrifying, earth-shaking force vibrated, causing the wound to expand and shatter. Blood instantly spurted out. The terrifying sword light pierced through the body of the intermediate sword of Gojosian, aiming directly at the heart, directly piercing and crushing it. The intermediate sword of Gojosian seemed to hear the sound of an explosion. He only felt an unbearable pain in his body. He opened his mouth, and a mouthful of blood spurted out like a spring, directly spraying it on his junior brother. The sudden splash of blood made the intermediate sword of Gojosian dumbfounded for a moment. He was dumbfounded, but Bawang was not. After being attacked continuously, there were at least 12 wounds on his body, deep to the bone. If not for the fact that he was not a human, but a savage beast whose bloodline had mutated many times and whose vitality was incomparably tenacious, he would probably have fallen to the ground and died. Even if his purpose was to delay the intermediate sword of Gojosian, he still had a grudge in his heart. Now that he finally had a chance to counterattack, how could Bawang let it go? He did not use any sword skills, but instead erupted with the most tyrannical power. He swung his sword, and the incomparably sharp sword tip pierced through the white yuan qi flow, leaving behind a subtle but astonishing trajectory. It was an incomparably sharp sword. The invasion of murderous intent made the intermediate sword of Gojosian's hair stand on end. At this time, he could no longer care about why there was a large mass of blood pouring over his head. He hurriedly drew his sword, breaking apart Bawang's whip sword, and then stabbed out. The sword that was sure to kill was about to pierce through Bawang's head. A hint of despair flashed across Bawang's eyes. That was a sword that he had erupted with all his strength. If he could not kill his opponent, he would be in a difficult situation. The despair in his eyes turned into determination. Even if he had to die, he would not let his opponent live. In the blink of an eye, a sword light, as if it had come from the heavens, directly broke apart the killing sword of Gojosian. Then, with the help of the recoil, it shot towards the neck of the intermediate sword of Gojosian at an even faster speed. In the eyes of the intermediate sword of Gojosian, the lightning-like white sword light was reflected. It was full of shock, and then it turned into disbelief and despair. With a poochie sound, a head flew high into the air. The muscles of the neck that had been cut off contracted, and blood spurted out like a fountain, making a hissing sound. The more than 2,000 sword of Gojosian were all dumbfounded. The scene that had happened in front of them was like a dream. A 2-star sword of Gojosian had actually killed 2 intermediate sword of Gojosian. It was an unbelievable thing. After killing the 2 intermediate sword of Gojosian, Boang quickly took out some pills and sprinkled them on his wounds. He also took out some pills to replenish his blood. Although his self-healing ability was outstanding, it would be even faster with the help of pills. Under the effects of his self-healing ability and the pills, the wounds on Bawang's body quickly healed. However, because he had lost a lot of blood, his face looked a little pale. Chu Mu took the space rings of the 2 intermediate sword of Gojosian, and so on. These were his spoils of war. Although some people were envious, no one wanted to snatch them. The advanced sword of Gojosian had their own status, and the space rings of the 2 intermediate sword of Gojosian were not enough to tempt them. The intermediate sword of Gojosian saw the fate of the 2 intermediate sword of Gojosian and did not dare to make an enemy out of Chu Mu. They were afraid that they would die under Chu Mu's sword. As for the Samsung sword of Gojosian, it was needless to say. His swordsmanship is profound, his grasp of timing is very precise, and he is adept at using his surroundings. A advanced sword of Gojosian evaluated. The other advanced sword of Gojosian nodded. Looking at the previous battle, Chu Mu had constantly dodged. Although he was in a sorry state, he could still dodge. This showed that his grasp of timing was very precise. Then he used the other intermediate sword of Gojosian to kill the 2 intermediate sword of Gojosian one by one. This showed his exquisite swordsmanship and his ability to use his surroundings. He is indeed a very talented junior. In the future, he will definitely be able to compete with us, but now... Another advanced sword of Gojosian evaluated. Chu Mu's performance was indeed worthy of their attention, but they did not feel that he was a threat. At least, he was not a threat in this place. As for the future, that was a matter for the future. No one could say for sure. At the end of the battle, Chu Mu's divine wilderness sword essence was not depleted at all. This was because the heaven-earth yuan qi here was too rich. Just a slight depletion would immediately restore it to its peak. What do we do now? A sword of Gojosian asked. Everyone's attention was diverted. They had entered the true essence, hall, wholeheartedly. Now that they were in the front hall, what should they do next? Everyone looked at the dozen advanced sword of Gojosian. They should be the clearest about this place. Wait. A advanced sword of Gojosian only said one word. The other advanced sword of Gojosian only nodded. Wait. If that was the case, then they would wait. Without being able to cultivate or use sword techniques, the waiting time seemed to be a little long. Some of the advanced sword of Gojosian had thoughts and ran over to Chu Mu to make friends. Brother Chu, how are you? My name is Sun Sen. Brother Chu's talent is unprecedented and will never be surpassed. Brother Chu's sword techniques are really unfathomable. It's amazing they were not fools. They could see that Chu Mu's talent was too shocking. Once he matured, his future achievements would be immeasurable. For such a person, it was best not to make an enemy out of him. Even if they could not become friends, they could treat him as an unrelated person. However, if there was a chance to become friends, they would naturally not let it go. In an instant, Chu Mu felt a headache coming on as he faced the numerous advanced sword of Gojosian. He could only deal with them perfunctorily and wait. After an unknown amount of time, just as the advanced sword of Gojosian were feeling impatient, they felt a tremor beneath their feet. The scattered heaven-earth yuan qi, floating in the air, seemed to be attracted and flowed towards a direction. Gradually, The void in the front hall seemed to be pierced by an invisible hand and then violently ripped open. A hole appeared and the hole continued to expand, releasing a terrifying suction force. The advanced sword of Gojosian's expression changed greatly and they hurriedly retreated. Their faces were solemn and filled with hope as they stared at the space door that was forming. They immediately understood that the space door that was about to appear should be the real place. The front hall of the Palace of True Essence was just a stop, a place to wait. Time passed slowly, and a huge hole was torn open in the void. There was only darkness inside, as dark as the abyss of hell. One look was enough to make one's heart palpitate, as if a terrifying demon was hiding inside. The terrifying suction force slowly decreased and finally disappeared. The space door was completely stabilized, showing the 2,000 advanced sword of Gojosian a new place, waiting for them to enter. It should be inside. One of the advanced sword of Gojosian said in an uncertain tone as he stared at the dark space door. "Let's go." Another advanced sword of Gojosian said solemnly and took the lead to rush out.